Before I open the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commissions, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili.
Present.
Foster.
Present.
Gilmore present. Hearn.
Present.
Lee.
Present.
Moran.
You're on mute.
Present.
And
Here.
Sampu.
Present.
Administrator Darcy Carley.
Present.
Staff member Kim Kavanaugh.
Present.
Yeah, all are here and accounted for, Mr. Chairman. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mayor General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. for the applications of James H. Roberts, Louis Xavier, J. H. Goldfarb, Ward Irrevocable GST Trust 2020, Terry L. Simpson's Trustee T. L. Simpson Living Trust, Oyster Harbor Clubs, Inc., Brian and Ann Gargles, Stephen A. Mojo, Christopher Sanford, Thomas W. Sanford Jr., Irrevocable Trust, Assembly Required LLC, George Tobey, Sidney Horton. The hearing will be held remotely as televised on Channel 18. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling an appointment by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and transmitted by the Information Technology Department of the Town of Barnstable on Channel 18. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmissions, please let Channel 18 or I know. Hearing none, this evening's hearing agenda is posted on the town website. On the agenda next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, cited by the governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to this hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the hearing will be televised via Channel 18. 2nd, the real-time public comments can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom link 843-5568-9650. Or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. The public can also email the comment to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. Tonight we have 2 RDA. The first one is James H. Robert, proposed septic system upgrade and additions in area of existing deck at 2656 Route 6A Barnstable as shown on the Assessors Maps 258 parcel 007. Is Dan with us?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Dan Ojala from Downcape Engineering. This, as you mentioned, is one of the more straightforward matters that come before you. It's one where we're on the outer portions of your jurisdiction. We had checked with Darcy. The addition is 79 feet away from a wetland. We're improving the situation by moving a septic that's about 50 feet away and moving it over 100 on the leaching. The tank will be 79.4. So I think all said, a nice improvement. We are introducing a dry well to help control the runoff from the new addition. If you'd like me to share the screen or answer any questions, I would be glad to. Thank you.
Can you show the screen while the commission have some questions so that they can make a reference to John?
Yeah, a quick question. Dan, if I read this right, you're adding 112 square foot of hardscape within the 50 to 100. You've got it disturbed 0 to 50 because you have a structure in it now. Wouldn't this, Darcy, maybe for you, wouldn't this normally be filed as an NOI because of that and requiring some mitigation for that 112 square feet in the 50 to 100? Wouldn't that normally be done? And why not here? So I'm not sure if Darcy, if that's for Darcy or you, Dan.
Yeah, if you want to field it, I'd be glad to give it a shot if you'd like, Darcy.
Yes, go ahead, Dan. Thank you.
So we generally look to a guidance document that was produced many, many years ago by the commission and is handed out regularly at their meetings. And that guidance document talks about what type of filing and what the distances are from the resource areas. And in this instance here, we fit squarely where we're more than 75 away with an addition to an RDA form. And that does enjoy the not having to fall under the hardscape regulation. So that is squarely within your guidelines of what you'd normally do. Here's the screen in case you'd like to look at that.
Thanks, Dan. Darcy, would you add or subtract from that?
I am good with what he said. It does meet our guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing, if you look closely, under the proposed addition, there's some existing deck that are there. So the square footage that our proposed addition is under the square footage that we have in the guideline for the filing.
Yeah, he's only calculating what is the square footage that falls in our jurisdiction. The addition's large, but there's only a section of it that's in our jurisdiction over an existing area.
Thank you.
Yeah, that does make a marked difference in this case. I should have brought that up.
Bill?
Yeah, I kind of misread this when I first got a copy of it, and I made a site visit, and I realized that where they're putting in this addition is literally right on a deck, and the deck is a really close planks. It's almost like the floor of a house, so it's really hardscape. And the posting for the boundaries of it is literally on this deck, and so I thought, well, having seen it, I guess it's existing hardscape, and so I realized, well, okay, maybe that's not a problem. But it originally had concerned me. I didn't realize it was literally on almost like the floor of a house, so to speak, this deck. So I don't have a problem with it.
Thanks, Bill. Pete?
Okay, just having to unmute myself. Abbo, I've got a bit of an agreement with you as well. Perhaps this conforms to our old guidelines, but what we have here really is zero buffer to our bordering vegetated wetland for a big chunk of the cross section of this property. And I know all of us on the board here recognize the environmental benefits of a buffer as opposed to a lawn. So wherein we have this case, all cases being sort of unique, where we are being asked for an addition, even though it is not that much different than the deck, it is now a living space, not a deck. And I think, Abbo, that it should have mitigation and have come in as an NOI. That's this commissioner's opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Any other comment from the commissioner? Larry?
Dan, let me ask you a couple of questions before I start taking it to the next level. First of all, as I'm looking at the plan, and this is the only site visit I didn't get to go see. I'm looking at your 50-foot buffer and your 100-foot buffer. So this work is within the 50 to 100. Is that correct?
Yes, all the work, with the exception of, well, I don't think would really be doing work, but we would be filling in some old septic that's pretty close to the 50, but I don't think that would really be considered ground disturbances. We'd just be pumping and filling with sand and dusting up a little bit. But yeah, all the new work, and again, I'd have to stress, folks, this is only 112 square foot of increase in hardscape, so it's a very de minimis project. And not only that, instead of having a hard decking sheet towards the wetland, we're capturing that with gutters and downspouts to a dry well. So you're pulling off quite a bit of runoff that wouldn't normally be heading towards that wetland. And these guidance documents, which were first published in 2012, were revised all the way, or 04 actually, were updated in 12, 11, 12, and 16. And they're still current today. So, hopefully we can stick with them. And, that's just if it's 400 square feet or more in this range, then you would look at an NOI. But for something like 100 square feet, when they're making a little bit better with the dry well and taking the whole septic out voluntarily and moving it more than 100, boy, it seems like they're doing everything right on this one.
Okay, the next question, Dan. I'm looking at this area right on the 50. Here, I've got my little arrow on it. Whether we're fighting with our arrows here.
Yeah, I can't see yours, but if you guide me north, south,
yeah,
east, west,
I see where you are. Okay, so basically, you're filling in and improving this area. That's the way I'm seeing it. Is that fair to say? Is that your intention?
By removing the leaching field, which is pretty close to the 50, I think that's a nice improvement. It's moving way out here to like 120 feet away, and pressure dosing it, getting it way up away from the wetland.
Okay, now in terms of hardscape, again, I'm at a disadvantage by not having gone there and seen it. But what would you consider to be the hardscape? Is it the deck, or is it something else?
Yeah, you guys have a very strict definition of hardscape. It would even include a gravel driveway. So yes, absolutely, decks are included in steps. And so just this one little area here and one little area here, and both are more than 79 feet from the wetland, would be increased. So we calculate that value to be 112 square foot, and it would just be in these two little areas here.
Okay. Now, is this deck? Is it non-existing now? Is this something that's going to be added onto the property?
No. The deck is absolutely there now and will be removed and replaced with this addition.
Okay. So, and the addition is going to be basically interior. You're going to have an interior rather than just an open exterior. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So bye-bye deck. Yeah.
All right. And is this, we're not getting into a site constraint or anything like that, but is there any other location on this property where you could improve the septic situation other than where you're proposing to put it?
So these tanks, which are about 80 feet away from the wetland, that's generally considered what we call an in-house approval with the health department. They don't mind because they're sealed units. They're not, one drop comes out of those being, in the outer, 50 to 100 and like 78, 9 feet away is okay with them. The leaching, which does by definition, have effluent coming out of it, is well over the required. Title V is 50 and the local is 100. And it looks like we're probably 120 plus away. The majority of it's even further than that. So
okay.
Much, much better than leaching within the 50-foot buffer.
Okay, and where these these tanks are showing, these two, they actually look like little bricks. But yeah. There's a 10-foot difference. Is that the only access into the house now? You'd have to reroute it if you were going to have it at a different location. Is that correct?
It's basically where it comes out now, and it goes into this old tank. But we're going to pump that, knock a hole in the bottom, and fill it with sand. Otherwise, not disturb that tank. Same thing here. Pump them, fill them with sand, and the new route comes into this tank here, goes into the pump chamber, and goes safely well away from the wetland over here.
Okay, all right. Dan, you've answered my questions to the script, so very well answered. And at this point, I consider that the RDA is, especially Darcy, has already laid the groundwork by having that be an existing, I don't want to call it a regulation, Darcy. I don't know what it is. It's a guideline, I guess. And Dan, the fact that you are relying upon that, I think that should just become part of the record. And I support an RDA here. I think there is this improvement where the deck used to be, and an improvement's going to be this. Is there a foundation under this, Dan, that's going to be put in place as opposed to an open deck underneath it?
Well, yeah. So the deck would have 4-foot frost protection footings now, and the new addition would as well. But it's generally just the footprint that you look at, especially when they're about 80 feet away,
okay.
Like this one is.
Okay. That's my feeling on it. If there's opposition, I'll state more thought. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Louise?
I don't have a problem with this proposal.
Thank you. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Sampo,
Pete,
No, I was muted, sorry.
Lee,
aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Motion carries.
6 to
Okay, I
1.
really appreciate your careful consideration, and, those rules can obviously be modified. There's guidelines for submitting a request for determination, and, well, I'm sorry, there's office operating procedures for filing wetland projects, and I'm sure Darcy would take suggestions on modifying them. We have many times in the past, and I appreciate your careful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second RDA is Luis Xavier, septic system upgrade at 70 Main Street, Centerville, as shown on the assessors maps 208, parcel 061. Pete?
Yes, good evening. Peter McEntee with Engineering Works representing Luis Xavier. He has a failed septic system. The existing septic system is in the front yard between the house and the road. The property is directly on Long Pond, and we're proposing a 2-bedroom design to be put in basically the only place you can put it in the front yard there. So there were 4 variances that were requested by us to the Board of Health, which were granted today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
So just like Peter says, the Board of Health approved this septic upgrade plans this afternoon. So any question from the commissioner? None? Channel 18, any public comments?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determination?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Warren,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Sampo,
Aye.
that is unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck,
Thank
Pete.
you. Thank you.
We have 8 NOI tonight. Quite a long list. The first one is J.H. Goldfuss, Ward Revocable GST Trust of 2020 to remove invasive species and revegetate it with native planting at 201 Bay Street, Boston, as shown on the assessors map 093, parcel 036 004. John.
Chuck.
Oh, Chuck.
Chuck Rowland, Sullivan Engineering and Consulting. I'm here tonight representing the Ward Family Trust. I think that we have Nick Pupelclover from EJ Jackstomer Landscaping, who wrote the land management plan. I think it's a fairly straightforward project. We're abutting the West Bay, right next to the drawbridge that I'm sure all of you have driven over a million times, which is just to the north right here. So this is the property, 201 Bridge Street, and this is the area of work. And we've put together a fairly extensive planting area. So planting area 1 and area 2, which will be removal of the rugosa rose, which is existing, will be maintained. So there's kind of our planting list. So I'll run down the project narrative real quick. The project site consists of approximately 1.1 acres of land in Osterville, abutting West Bay. Site is developed with a single-family dwelling, pier, detached garage, and all associated appurtenances, including patio, driveway, septic system, and deck. The wetland resources at the site are coastal beach, coastal bank, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And the project proposes to remove invasive species and revegetate with native plants. The project will include about 5,770 square feet invasive plant removal with bare areas to be replanted with native species. Existing established native or non-invasive species will be freed from entangled vines with bare areas from invasive removals will be replanted with native species and a jute netting to help establish the plant community. And I won't get into the land management report unless you guys want me to, but with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Larry?
Chuck, I noticed that it's not the steepest grade coming off the edge, but it's steep enough. What is the method by which you propose to remove the invasives? Hand or machine or a combination?
There's going to be a combination. So they're going to be hand cutting where they have to and they don't want to disturb the area around it, as well as small equipment in the area. And then the area will be stabilized with jute netting and replanted.
Do you expect it's going to have to be dug fairly deep to get the root system out, or is that not going to be an issue? Do you have an idea on that?
I don't think it'll be that deep. I know that Nick has, he should be on here. I'm hoping that he was let in, but Nick, are you on here? I guess he was not let in from the.
Just change
can you hear me? I was muted. Sorry.
Chuck, he's there.
Okay.
Yeah, so mostly hand removal, especially on the slope there. You know, we wouldn't really be able to get a machine down, you know, where the steeper grade is towards the water side. So it'd be all hand removal. You know, a lot of bittersweet in the rugosa bed. Leaving the rugosa, but definitely got to get the bittersweet out of there and kind of let the rugosa thrive. You know, so I don't see that going too deep at all. You know, up closer towards the lawn side, there's a bit more variety of weeds in that area. So, you know, that might be dug out a little bit. I don't see any big machinery going in though. Mostly, you know, shovel work or hand work, and you know, maybe machine to remove material, but not really going to be excavating anything by any means. Mostly hand removal, I would say, in this area.
Okay, now on this planting area number 1 detailed view that's on the screen now, with all the little circles, is there additional removal of invasives in that location as well as over the bank?
Yeah, so there's a lot of in that area. It was a lot of. There's some beach plum. There's some you know, native plantings in there that have just really been overtaken to the point of kind of no return. You know, again, with a variety of weeds in that area, which is in the land management plan there. But you know, that's basically to the point of just pop them out. You know, maintain, get the invasives under control, and then kind of replant afterwards. Like Chuck said, with all the netting and stuff like that to help it root in and prevent invasives from coming back.
Do you anticipate there being as part of your plant management, do you anticipate there being a condition or a condition, I guess, where if things don't take root or survive, that they'd be replaced within the 3-year period? Or do you anticipate that?
I wouldn't anticipate it, but if something didn't make it for one reason or another, absolutely, yes, we would replace. But we'd have to get temporary irrigation. We'll have gardening teams kind of, you know, maintaining that on a biweekly basis for forever, but, you know, definitely for the next 3 years. So I would say if on the off chance something doesn't make it, yes, it will get replaced, but hopefully, you know, everything makes it through. Okay.
And this is a beautiful property. Have these people lived here for a while, or is this something that is fairly new that it's occurred? In other words, has this grown rapidly in recent years or over time?
A little bit of both. I would say I've been on the property for 5 years or so.
Okay.
So since I've been there, it hasn't really been previously hadn't been maintained too well. And then you get into it, you know, where you're now at a point of, again, like I said, no return. and then it's kind of just keeping things down right now. But I'd say it's more of a long-term kind of got let go, you know.
Okay, that's fine. Well, thank you very much, Nick. No further questions at this time.
Nick, who you with? Are you with EJ Paxtimer?
Yes, sir. EJ Jacksheimer. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I made a visit to the site and was able to talk with the owner, Eileen. I think her last name was either Ward or Goldfarb, and we chatted about it. And the reason I was there is because it's a 25-foot wide vegetated buffer, very narrow between that and the ocean, if you will, the estuary. And I thought, well, what's going on here? And when I saw it, I was sort of somewhat taken aback by how it did not seem to me to have such a bad invasive problem per se. I mean, yes, there is bittersweet, and I hate bittersweet, should be taken out. That's all well and fine. But it seemed as though on the lawn area, the lawn half, not that deep sloping area, which is largely Rosa rugosa, which you're saying you're going to keep, which is good. It was like grasses, just sort of natural grasses. It looked just sort of, like, an unmowed, rough back field, so to speak. And the owner was sort of going, yeah, well, I want to kind of make it look better. It looks kind of ugly. And I'm thinking, well, and I told her, I said, well, ugly, natural is okay. I don't see a lot of problems. She looked at this. She looked at, she's pointing at these, she called them barberry. And I don't know what they were, but they're large, roundish. I don't know if they were trimmed or what, but they're kind of like round. I think they're barberry. They're like about 4 feet tall. They're
the red ones?
The red.
Yeah. Yep.
Brown. And she says, well, that's an invasive. Well, I know that barberry isn't, but I don't know enough whether or not there are, invasive barberry as opposed to native barberry. Can you tell me what those barberry were?
That's actually out of this line of view in the planting plan here. So that would be in front of, where these plants line up here. But I don't know, to be quite honest with you, exactly what kind it is. But they've been there definitely since I've been there.
She was saying they should be coming out, and I'm thinking, if it's just barberry, and I know barberry, they're pretty big bushes, so to speak. Yeah. I thought, well, why are we taking this out? Why are we taking that out? And it seemed more like a beautification thing more than an invasive. And so I guess I have a little heartburn over it because of that. And then I pointed to an area right near that, those barberries, if you will, and someone put in mulch. And she goes, oh, they're my children. They just put it in. They had some leftover mulch or what have you. And I'm thinking, well, when we plant, we want to have, natural grasses and whatnot growing up. And we don't want to have this sort of manicured with a bunch of little bushes that are mainly, a lot of mulch. And so I guess my question is, and I like your the vegetation, the species that you're putting in here in this diagram and whatnot. Are you going to allow, natural grasses and whatnot grow up, or are you going to be mulching in between? I hope not, at least certainly not after the first year anyway.
Yeah, so we definitely have beach grass on here to come in. Anything natural that kind of fights through, I really don't see a problem with it. Anything that's invasive, that's going to do harm to, what we do plant that's native, kind of a different story there. But, the idea would be definitely, and again, the barberry, I don't believe is a part of this. So, kind of a little bit of throwing me for a loop on that one. But we had basically all behind that and then down to the water was in this. And it is, there's a lot of poison ivy, a lot of bittersweet, a couple other things in there as well. But, if native grasses fight through, I don't have a problem with it. But the idea would be kind of start fresh and be able to maintain a, native plant community.
One thing that the property owner pointed out, she said, my grandchildren go walking down this path to the pier. Mm-hmm. And she said, we've got all this Rosa rugosa, and they get scratched and whatnot. And gee, do you think we can like clear that out just a little bit? And I say, maybe 3 feet. I had no problem with that. But
Off the path, kind of.
Off the path,
Mhm,
I'm thinking that right in the middle of on the left side, you got that little round thing, and then you got the path, and then I think those bayberry that I'm talking about, or barberry, are almost right in the middle, right sitting on the lawn. I think that's where they are, because I can see where that path was. I was sort of standing right there. They're really.
You see my cursor right there?
Your cursor.
It's not on yours, but I think that they're like up in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're right up to the lawn, really. They're close to the lawn.
They're up here.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So the work that we are proposing under this filing is outside of that area.
So that you're doing the slope, that really steep bank?
And right up to like that's the whole plan.
But I thought
removing the invasives and trying to maintain the rugosa rose, and then up above the bank, we're going to be putting all these native plants in.
It looked to me like it was largely the Rosa rugosa that was all along there. I mean, it seemed where you're planting all of these plants, it almost seems like right now it's got the Rosa rugosa. So,
I mean, it may have popped. It might look different now, but when we were there and putting this plan together this past, like early spring, it was very much taken over by bittersweet. So that's why we had a lot of planting in this area.
Yeah.
And the rugosa was more where you're saying where that steeper slope was, water side. The rugosa is really, I mean, this line kind of shows it, I would say, but the rugosa really starts where it starts to slope down, and that would all stay. It would just get cut down and very carefully run through for the vines and poison ivy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then that way the rugosa could kind of, start thriving again and hold the bank up.
Okay. I want to make sure they got lots of vegetation in there, and it's not just some kind of gardening project, which is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I'm saying I'm kind of surprised here. I mean, I looked at this thing and I said, awesome, great, go for it, guys. I think it's great. It's exactly what we would normally want to do. Remove the invasives, replant with native species. We should have a monitoring plan, obviously. If they want temporary irrigation, it would have to be removed. The usual conditions that Darcy would put in this. But I'm not sure why we're taking quite as much time in this, because I think it's a win-win. It's what we would normally ask for. So well done, guys, in my opinion.
Appreciate that.
Well, if we are approving these projects, the annual report for 3 years, that would be one of the conditions.
Right. And if they want irrigation, it would be temporary, right, Tom?
Right. That would be the standard language under the other conditions. And the other things that I want to check with Darcy is, do you want to have a written notification if the landscaping contractor is changing?
Yeah, I would say, so it would be EJ Jax Timer.
Correct.
Nick, what is your last name?
Public over.
Okay. And we would also want to make it clear, I noticed that you were asking for an ongoing condition. So the commission would have to vote for a special condition that says this would go on to a certificate of compliance as an ongoing condition to be able to do the invasive removal by hand or mechanical. There's no herbicides being used. So that is a special vote that the commission would have to. We do that with Phragmites. It goes on as an ongoing condition, but I just want to make it clear that you should vote that in, Tom.
So is the ongoing condition for invasive removal without herbicides, right?
And to continue on the order on the certificate of compliance. So it would go on after the 3 years of the order of conditions or any extension. And then what Bill said is correct. We would want the mulch should only be down the road. The mulch should be only around the drip edges of the plants. Whatever is natural coming in should be allowed to come in between the plants.
Okay. Luis?
Yeah, I would just say that I agree. This is what we normally look to have happen. The good stuff is maintained and encouraged, and we remove the nasty invasives and replant with natives. So I'm very supportive of this.
Thank you, Louise. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted and subject to the annual report for 3 years and a written notification to the staff if there is any change in terms of the landscaping contractor? Right now is EJ Dexheimer Landscaping. The other condition is the ongoing condition for invasive removal without the use of herbicides and naturalize the understory area.
So moved.
And we should I'm sorry, I just want to add, with the ongoing condition, we want to have it submit in writing that they want to do that down the road. Like if they have to go in there, we should have something in writing.
Okay. So
moved, or second Peter's motion.
Roll call.
Sampu,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster,
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
The second NOI is Terry L. Simpson's trustee, T.L. Simpson Living Trust, to relocate existing dwelling on new flood compliance foundations, replace detached garage and all associated appurtenances, including driveways, relocations, and mitigations at 525 South Main Street, Centerville, as shown on the assessors maps 20206, parcel 068. This is it John or Chuck?
This is John O'Day, Sullivan Engineering Consulting, representing the applicant. I will bring up my plan. Plans of now. This project is at 525 South Main Street. It's developed with an existing dwelling, which is shown on the plans, kind of grayed out. That dates to 1770. Our wetland resource on this site is there's an isolated wetland when you came in just to the left of the driveway that is around a drainage ditch along South Main Street. It's discontinuous. It does not drain to anywhere specifically, but it is a wetland nonetheless, so it's a isolated wetland. We are also in land subject to coastal storm flowage. The project as proposed is to relocate the dwelling. So again, the existing dwelling shown grayed out. It's getting moved to the northeast about 20 some odd feet. And it's being done so that it can the house is up on a knoll. It's being done so that the foundation can be flood zone compliant, allow water to flood in and flood out by getting it somewhat off of this knoll. The existing driveway, which is kind of pretty close to the easterly property line, is going to get removed and it's going to get relocated mostly outside of the 50-foot buffer. And so by doing that, we end up in a significant reduction in any hardscape within the 50-foot buffer. We also end up with a nice area to provide mitigation for the project. We have a work limit shown sort of construction access purposes along the edge of the existing driveway. We're taking care of drainage. There's an existing septic system which was upgraded 2020, it looks like, which is going to remain. Existing garage is just right around the 100-foot buffer, is basically going to be replaced pretty close to where it exists. I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the project.
Thank you, John. Louise?
So you're moving it off this knoll. Is there going to be a lot of regrading involved with this?
There is not really any significant grading that's going to happen with this. The first floor of the house for flood purposes does need to go up about 2 feet. But in terms of grading kind of around the upper portion of the house, we've shown this as a 12 contour, and the existing right here is 12, 11. So maybe like a half a foot of grading around the house itself. And then on the lower edge, this is a existing 7 contour, and we're talking about, shaving that down to a 6.5. So, I mean, is there inches of grading just to make the heights of things work? Yes, but no significant fill or cut, I would say, at all on the property in any direction.
Thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted?
So moved.
So, second.
Roll call.
Sabadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Sampo,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
The third NOI tonight is Oyster Harbor Club, Inc. to demolish the existing beach cabana and build a new beach cabana, and to permit an existing patio at the tennis area at 170 Grand Island Drive, Osterville, as shown on the assessor's map 053 parcel 012001. Chuck?
Chuck Rowland, Sullivan Engineering Consulting, representing the Oyster Harbors Club, Inc. Run through the project narrative real quick. The project is located on the Oyster Harbors Club property, which contains approximately 6 acres of land, located on Grand Island abutting Tim's Cove. The site's developed with Oyster Harbors Clubhouse, beach cabana facilities, kids camp, the tennis courts, tennis cabana, and all associated appurtenances. And the site is in common ownership as the golf course and pro shop across the street. The project as proposed is to demolish the existing beach cabana facilities and build new beach cabana and to permit an existing patio at the tennis area. Presently, the 2 beach structures are the cabana with the changing rooms and bathhouse, which are both in disrepair and have lasted well beyond their expected lifespan. The existing structures can be seen in the 1951 aerials and the town GIS. The new cabana will have less footprint than the existing 2 structures and will be elevated to allow the passage of sand and storm water under the buildings. No disturbance of vegetation is proposed as part of the removal of the existing structures or the construction of the new building. And during construction, a work limit for construction access will be constructed with silt fence, straw bales, and wattles. And I'll switch to, you guys can all see my screen right now.
Chuck, one thing I just want to point out, the plan that you are showing is the revised plan submitted this afternoon. So it's dated May 23rd.
So you can see I put in a construction access with work limit. The new building will incorporate changing rooms and bathrooms. Under new building codes, the new building will be able to withstand wind and stormwater inundation better than the existing structures. And to better support the bottom of the bank, the existing timber railroad tide wall will be replaced, which is located here. The patio and the tennis area will be constructed after the original reconstruction of the tennis was constructed. After the original reconstruction of the tennis cabana under SC 3555449, and it was constructed due to the grass in the area becoming muddy from excess foot traffic in the area. And mitigation for the construction of the patio is proposed a 3-to-1 ratio in the lawn area to the east of the tennis courts The proposed mitigation will be an expansion of the previously approved meadow area, and mitigation demarcation is proposed in the form of 8-foot single rail fence sections with 15-foot spaces. So I've shown that, right? This is the patio mitigation calculations, as well as the proposed meadow area with mitigation demarcation. So as Tom said, this is a revised plan that I submitted this afternoon. Nothing of great substance has changed on the plan. It's mostly just clarification. So I was asked to put down hardscape calculations for the area, which I have shown here. So if you include the existing deck that we have requested to remove, the cabana and the bathhouse, we have 1,498 square feet of existing, and with the two structure, with the cabana and the deck, we're at 1,539. So that's 42 square feet of additional hardscape. I did not include the walkways as part of that, which we typically don't do. Walkway construction acts or walkway accesses, we don't typically include in hardscape calculations. But this is the project. So you had an existing bathhouse, an existing cabana, and an existing deck, and those are being removed. We have a proposed deck, a proposed cabana, and a proposed timber walkway. So with that, I'm happy to take questions that you may have.
Before I go to the commissioner, Darcy went out to the site. Is the revised plan looks okay to you?
So I advised Chuck that there was a boardwalk that was not shown. It was off the end of the tennis cabana. That was one thing. I don't know if the plan, I asked him to clarify the 50 and the 100 from what was the resource area. Chuck, did you do that?
So I have the 1,500 foot buffer right here, as well as dimensions. And then on page 2, I can show you that in a second. I've been in discussion with the general manager, Doug Mayo, and he agreed to remove the existing walkway. So I've actually put that on this plan.
Okay.
And so we'll switch to the page 2. And I have shown a 1,500 foot buffer.
Thank you.
And it's labeled right there.
Okay.
And this is the tennis, this is the patio. And I have a distance shown right there.
Thanks. Thank you very much. The only other concerns that I had was there were a lot of boats all over the place. You have them in the dune. You don't locate the existing kayak rack that is probably in the worst place that I'd put a kayak rack. Oh, there it is.
It's actually, yeah, it's been on there.
It seems like it's right on the very, very edge of that dune. And then there were boats laid all along the existing walkway. So I think with this project, you got to do something. They're not very good places, whether you build something back closer to the top of the bank. I don't know.
Yeah, so those have a lot. I'm not telling you there were never boats there during my site visits. But they're definitely, from the photos you showed me, there's a fair amount more boats now than there were when I was working there. And clearly people are getting prepared for Memorial Day weekend to go do a little kayaking. So, it's another thing we discussed, and we're happy to come up with a solution to keep them off the dune. So whether we decide to put them in another location or put them up in the parking area. So the boat rack that's been there for quite a while, I can't tell you that it enjoys or does not enjoy a permit. But we're happy to discuss that. But those have been the club uses that kayak rack for club boats for communal use in the area, where the boats that are lying on the ground are kind of members and people that live on the island that just leave their kayaks on the ground. So we're happy to come up with a better solution to that.
Yeah, I just figured since you're coming into the commission with a proposal that you could design something better. I don't know if the playground was actually labeled on this plan. Maybe something could be constructed over in that area.
Okay.
Just as an idea, but I think there's a square for where the playground is.
Maybe on page 1. That's this,
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think I located that quite a while ago.
And then actually ran into George when I was out there. So he happened to, I was focused on the boats, but there's a post that's in front of the kayak rack. I don't know whether it's a outhaul post or what it is, if you know what that is.
I can answer that question.
Oh, thank you. I was leaving and George was coming in. So.
Yeah, no, those are support posts for the buoy system that they put out to to delineate their swimming area.
Oh, okay. So maybe just label that.
They're not outhaul posts.
Yeah. So maybe you just want to put a label on that so we know that it's there.
Yeah. Thanks, Louise.
You said that we ordinarily don't ask for mitigation for walks. But I think if it's a hardscape walk as opposed to sort of a natural walk through the woods, that's a different story. And it wasn't clear to me if you gave us mitigation for that or not in your
so the way that we thought of it is it's just the same way as, a boardwalk for access to a pier. This is a boardwalk for access to a beach cabana.
Yeah, I don't think we do mitigation. If the commission sees that it's something that's needed in that area, then we would not require mitigation for a walkway. I don't know whether they're pushing strollers or things like that. If there's a chance that somebody doesn't need a walkway, then we ask them not to have one. But I think with such a popular area, high use area, I don't think they would need the mitigation for that.
Okay, as long as you're comfortable with it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Louise. John?
Quick question, check. It looks like, perhaps I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like that the new cabana is going to be much closer to Tim's Cove than the old cabana. Is it moving closer to the water, or is it pretty much on the same footprint?
So as you can see, this lighter gray right here, where we showed the existing structure,
right,
is the closest point to Tim's Cove, where we've extended it out. So we've changed it more from like a long and skinny rectangle to kind of like a fatter and stouter rectangle. So is it getting closer to Tim's Cove? That depends on your interpretation of closer. So we're not any closer to any resource because we're in a resource.
You're in a resource. You just cover it, but in the hardscape of it, at first I thought it was a much larger bit of hardscape, but with the removal of the bathhouse, et cetera, it's the net hardscape in the resource is smaller. Is that correct? Just my understanding.
So if you're comparing like our resource to resources, I showed it with the removal of this existing deck that we showed off on the other side of the stairs. I think we're down to arguing over 40 square feet. So are we getting bigger? Substantially, no. But if we want to get down to it, we are like the way I've shown it, we're I think 41 or 42 square feet bigger in an area that's we've been historically working in since the 50s.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, is there any septic issues? I know you got bathhouses and showers and everything. Are there any septic issues? And maybe Tom knows from the Board of Health, but
So we
septic
have-
issues with this revised plan?
We have an existing pump chamber that we're going to remain, and I don't exactly know the location of the ejector line, but it ejectors up the hill into an IEA type system that's up near Pooh's Corner.
So you're going to just tie into that?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, Tom, there's no Board of Health issues in this?
No.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Larry?
you.
Larry?
No, I think you're muted.
Larry's muted, Tom.
Can't hear you, Larry.
Larry, do you want to unmute yourself? George, what was while we're waiting for Larry to unmute himself? George, what is that support post? Is that support post for the buoy?
There's 2 4x4 posts. They're probably to where that beach grass area is, the boat rack and the beach grass. The first one's located just to on the edge of on the left side of that beach grass, and then the other one's further down, I think, towards Tim's call. Yeah, right down there.
Oh, somewhere in here.
Yeah, and then all they do is they anchor the inner end of the swimming buoy.
Right.
Buoys that delineate their swim area.
Yeah, and then they pull out those buoys in the wintertime.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
It's for boat traffic safety, which I'm happy to locate if that's what you guys.
They're fine.
You should post. You should show those 2 support posts on the revised plan.
Great. Yep.
They're
Larry,
fine. I have no problem.
yeah, Larry. Do you have any comment? Can you unmute yourself?
I think he's having trouble unmuting. I saw him drag his name around on the screen, so I can't help him. I don't know.
He's talking, but not saying much.
Not
Sign
much.
language, Larry. Sign language.
Not much help. Channel 18. Any public comment on this one?
Seeing none.
None. Larry, I give you one more chance for your comment. Can you unmute yourself? No.
Oh,
Okay,
there he
I
goes.
okay. In the left-hand, this whole picture up here is blocking all the controls down here for me. That's the problem. Okay.
You can move that. You
Well,
can.
I tried to, but I didn't want to wipe out everything on here. So anyway, well, we're okay for the moment. The question I had really deals with the SE 35449 and the work up where the tennis courts are. Is that would that be a revision or an amendment to a previously approved plan rather than part of this one? Darcy, I think that's really something that you may have a spin, or if you're comfortable with having that portion of the project included with the cabanas, I'm fine with it. But I just wondered if that was really a revision of an previously approved project rather. What do you think?
I'm sorry. Which one? What can you say again?
Well, up near the tennis courts, at the end of the tennis courts, that's where Chuck has included a patio, not a patio, but he showed it up there.
Yeah.
And
that's part. Yeah, that's part of this property.
it's part of the property, but I didn't know whether it was subject to a previous NOI. It's showing on the big property here as next to the practice court, it's showing a as-built patio.
Oh, they put it, so there's an open order there was an order of conditions that needed a certificate of compliance, and I think it was Emil that went out and found that they constructed that. So that's what started this whole filing, is they had to get a notice of intent to approve that. It's after the fact.
All right, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to have some unanswered question come forward. Otherwise, I think that Chuck has done a great job laying this all out. I I don't know whether any of you went inside any of those changing rooms. I didn't go inside to change, but they really bring me back to my childhood. So, any event, so I think it's time to replace them.
Oh,
Thank you.
I do have one more question for
Yeah,
Chuck
go
because I didn't look at it. Was is there any demarcation for your meadow
There-
areas in the
There
areas?
is.
Okay.
It's in the narrative as well as I have exactly shown what we want to do.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the support post for the swimming buoy?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, did we do public comment on this?
I thought I did. While we're waiting for Larry?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
very good.
I second the motion.
Roll call.
The labeling of the playground. I'm sorry.
Oh, the labeling of the playground.
Yep.
Good idea.
Roll
Abadili,
call.
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your comments on the plan. And thank you for working with me.
I'm so sorry. I got to bring one more thing up. Are you going to come back with the relocation of the kayaks and the whole boat issue? I forgot about that before the motion was made. I'm sorry.
If you want to include a general condition that they are not to be stored in the dune, and we can come up with a solution that's different. If you're okay with that, or
Excuse me, Tom, I think that the motion needs to be remade to include a condition that a plan will be submitted subject to staff approval.
I like that.
Yeah.
So I think the motion needs to be
Reopen.
resubmitted.
So move.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye, Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chuck.
The next NOI is Brian and Ann Gargo's proposed second-story deck and associated stair at 163 Estate Avenue, Hyannis, as shown in Assessors Map 306, Parcel 197. This is Karen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group, representing the owners of the property, Brian and Ann Guaco. What we're looking to do today is to build a second-story deck for egress off the side of the building and to have an elevated area where they can sit outside. The majority of the work is in an area previously approved for the commission for lawn, and a small portion of it is cantilevering over a wall towards the coastal area. The cantilevered area will be approximately 12 feet above the existing grade and will not affect
Karen,
the
Gary, can you show the plan on screen?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Basically, just for a general note, the area that is brown is the area of the deck. The two areas that are shown as green are proposed mitigation. You can see on this majority of area right here is over the existing lawn that was approved, and a portion that is cantilevered up in the air towards the coastal area 2 feet. Then to mitigate this, we have an area in this front of the house right here, and we have an area where there's existing pavers right now that we're going to remove at the back of the building. That is the entire project. The calculations are shown for the mitigation, and then Darcy had asked that we submit a plan that shows the plant palette right on the face of the plan it is in the order of conditions that you received the paperwork, but Darcy wanted this visually on the plan as well. So we've included that and submitted that information earlier today. Other than that, I'd be glad to answer some questions the commission may have.
Thank you, Karen. Questions from the commissioner? Anyone?
No.
Darcy, those are ongoing conditions. Those you will keep going, right?
I'm sorry, ongoing, I know he's,
the ongoing conditions that you send me on the DEP SE 35238, those are ongoing conditions regardless of this application anyway, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't know that for the, are you talking about the DEP number for?
There is that ongoing condition, like 3 items in there. One is the herbicide pesticide under the SE 3-5238.
Isn't that the DEP number for a different project?
Yeah, Tom, I'm not sure what.
You're on Shell Lane.
It's for the other.
Yeah, Shell Lane, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then.
My mistake.
The only thing I would ask, Kieran, is just for the record, what is your revised plan date with the planting palette on it, just so we have that?
It's the same date. I didn't put a revision on it because the information was included in the notice of intent itself. We can put a revised date on it and submit it. We can put a revised
Yeah, it's usually better. It just makes it easier for staff to know that it's actually a revised plan, because, yeah, please, if you can send it in with a revised date on it, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
You use today's date, 5/23.
That would be fine, yes. I print it right now when they're done, and I can stamp it tonight, and we can drop it off tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chandler team, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None? Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted?
So moved.
Revised plan, date May 23.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Kern.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, members. Have a good night.
The next NOI is Stephen A. Mojo's reinstatement of an aquatic plant management programs to control nuisance vegetations while maintaining indigenous species at 119 Shell Lane, 35 Hall Lane, 1179 Main, 127 Shell Lane, and 121 Shell Lane contour as shown on the Assessors Map 019, Parcel 101-002, 162-130-002, 158, and 159. Who is Carl Nelson?
Carl Nielsen, yes. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So this project is, as you probably read, it's just to reinstate the management program that had been working pretty well previously. It was permitted in 2012 and that permit expired. And work really hasn't happened in the last few years, so it's become overgrown. Work is being proposed to basically just reinstate what had been done. So it's the use of fluoridone, which is an herbicide that's systemic. The use of an herbicide called diclot, which is a contact. And that's going to be coupled with pre-treatment and post-treatment survey work and reporting to document the effects and adjust the management as needed, with reports going to the commission each year. The pond is a 1.2 acre pond with wetland around it. We are proposing to put a path. We're really just clearing some vegetation to allow access for the treatment equipment that had been done previously, but it's overgrown at this point. So it's just a dedicated path rather than allowing the tractor to pick a path and cut through brush randomly. The design is to have one path of access that would be used regularly. And that ends up being 435 square feet of impact to bank. It's a 6-foot wide path and it's 72 feet long. So that's the nature of the impact for access. And I think that's really it, unless you have any questions, I guess I'd take those.
If I remember right, in one of the communications that you sent out in terms regarding to some of the DEP question stuff, do you want to go through that?
Yeah, I might need to be reminded of what those questions were, but I think their question was related to the impact to bank and whether it would be mitigated 1-to-1, and we're asking for a variance there based on the fact that it's under 500 square feet of impact, and it's essential to the project to be able to access the pond through the existing vegetation. So it's kind of unavoidable to carry out the project.
In one of the email that you sent, that you can reduce impacts or reduce the access to around 378 square feet.
Yeah, if we cut it back to I talked to the contractor, and if we can get it to a 4.5 or 5 foot wide path, they'd be able to pass their boat and equipment through rather than making it a 6 foot wide path. So that would definitely reduce the impact. If that's preferable, we can adjust that or make that a condition on the permit.
Okay, thanks. Let me go to Larry.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Carl. I went through this project with the applicant Steve and Jean Mojo almost a year ago, and this is a piece of artistic work you've done. It's one of the best things I've seen for this kind of project on the Cape. Would you give us some indication as to the severity is the word I come up with, but the significance of the growth in the pond and what would happen if this work was not done? You have an idea as to the scope that would happen and how long it would take before it was overtaken by growth?
Yeah, the goal here is to maintain balance. So we're not looking to eliminate all plants. The proposed approach is really an approach that will control overgrowth. So the treatment will be looked at each year, and obviously if we can avoid putting in chemicals and doing a treatment on a given year, we will. So fluoridone is an herbicide that's systemic, which means it kills the plant and the roots, and it should be lasting. One of the things that the plant that is there is a species of Potamogeton, which drops seeds every year. So if you can get that plant under control before it drops seeds, and then do a year or 2 or even 3 years of treatment, you deplete the seed bank for that plant, and then you'll be able to skip a number of years before it becomes a problem again. And so that's essentially what we're hoping to do, is to knock it back with a year or 2 of repeated treatment, and then back off for treatment if needed, so that we're not disrupting all the plants all the time, basically. So it's if it's an open water habitat and we just want to maintain that, if you let it grow in, it does get pretty weed choked. I've seen some photos that Mr. Mojo has sent me that are clear. It does get to the point where it's covered with plants, so the entire water column is filled with aquatic biomass, and that's not good for oxygen conditions in the pond. It basically at night those plants senesce and consume oxygen, so you got to maintain that balance of open water habitat within the system to maintain the health if you're going to keep it a pond.
Now, is all the work you're going to do with plants just within the body of water as opposed to along the shoreline.
Yep.
So nothing's going to be done on the shoreline. And my understanding is that the Mojo property is the only one that really, there's six properties that border on this, but this is the only one that has access to the pond.
right.
Is that correct?
I believe so.
And do you think that if you find that you do need, I have no trouble with a 6-foot variance, especially in the first part of it. It could be reduced at a later time. Do you think that's more feasible, or do you think you can cut it down to 4.5 or 5 feet?
Yeah, I think we can. I talked to the contractor. They said 4.5 would be the minimum for them.
All right.
So-
And it's a boat that they wheel in, and then they take their equipment out and they go out on the pond, and that's how they do it.
Yeah, it's an aluminum john boat that will have a tank they'll bring down, and they just, it will take them all of 20 minutes out on the pond once a year.
Okay. All right.
So it's a quick and easy material. It's 1 gallon of material basically.
All right. Is there a time of year restriction on this that you know of, or does it matter when it's done?
Well, the way Floridone works is you put it in and you need 60 to 90 days of contact time. And what it's doing is it's essentially starving the plants by controlling their chloroplasts, which are the pigments that are green within the plant, and allow it to photosynthesize. So if you stop the process of photosynthesis, you've starved the plant essentially. So it takes 90 days for this material to kill the plant. But that's why it's such a safe herbicide, is that unless you have a chloroplast, it really doesn't affect you. So it doesn't affect fish and wildlife. And it's one of the few herbicides that we are allowed in Massachusetts to use in the drinking water supply if you wanted to. It doesn't affect humans that way. So I guess to answer your question, it's 90 days of contact time. So we would put it in early June. And have July, August, and September for control, June, July, and August for control, and you get multiple years of control from that result.
Okay. All right, one more question. Now, you're from Lowell, is that right?
Well, our Massachusetts headquarters are in Lowell. I'm actually out of our Connecticut office. But
have you been on the Cape before for a project like this?
Yeah, we do quite a bit of work.
Good. Glad to hear it. Thank you very much.
And the islands.
Louise?
I was fortunate enough to view the pond from the Mojo property, and it's a beautiful little spot. But I was also told that there is access off of Shell Lane, and it looks like that's the route that you're going to create the path from. I tried to find that alternative route and couldn't locate it. And I see that in your map, you show the road, the little road or whatever it is coming off of Shell Lane. I'm wondering, and then that's how you're going to get to the path that accesses the pond. Is there a name for that? Little road there off of Shell?
Not sure if there is a name or not.
I mean, it's not labeled as anything. I'm just wondering how we would access that area. How we would find it.
Yeah, let me
identify it. It might be worth giving that information to staff.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I see my understanding is we're just accessing it through. Yeah, I see that. I have that image up on my screen as well. It's really coming through the Mojo property.
No, I don't think so. It's off of Shell Lane.
Yeah.
What your drawing shows.
Can we provide a point of view on that?
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
I see Hello?
Yeah, hi.
My understanding is Carl talking?
Yeah, I see that.
You need to mute your speaker, Gene and Steve. There's a delay.
Mojo property.
Yes, it is.
Quite a delay.
It's our property.
Which your drawing shows.
Does it really matter?
Well, I think that the staff ought to have access to what's going
Hi,
on.
that is,
Introduce yourself.
hello, I'm Jean Mojo.
Hi, Gene. It's too many noise in here. Do you want to say what's on the background? Is it a TV?
I'm sorry.
The live stream is a 2-minute delay.
Oh. Go ahead. Carl?
Yeah, hi.
Right, well, you got more questions, Tom, from commissioners?
Yeah.
I think I can help you out too with that, because I went to see that through that area. There's a big stone pillar right down at the bottom of Shell Lane. And I believe that access runs right in through there, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Carl?
Believe so, yes. But Mr. Mojo or Gene would be able to.
Well, if the Mojos would shut their TV off, then we wouldn't get that delay.
Yeah. The other things too, the access is important for the staff. So if they want to go there, so you can give the directions, and or George can give the information to Darcy so that they can go there. Bill.
I cut my teeth as a young aquatic biologist in 1974, applying herbicides to control aquatic weeds. And in the last few years, I have advocated for the use of sonar on Mystic Lake because of the hydrilla problem. So I'm familiar with the idea of putting herbicides on aquatic weeds. I'm quite familiar with it. And usually there is some reason to be doing that. Usually, you have swimming. We can't swim. We can't boat. There's usually some really obvious recreational aspect that is threatened. And so I went there today. I brought along a pair of hip boots, and I went down into the pond, and I talked to Steve Mojo as well. And he has a beautiful view of this pond. And we saw that, and it's like, wow, this is like kind of a nice looking little standing water off there in the distance. And I feel for him. And I think, gee, that I get why you want to have it be open. It has an aesthetic appeal. Yet beyond that, I don't know what the value of doing it is. You have basically, as he explained, about a 3 foot deep. It looks like about an acre of open water, and it's totally, really super heavily vegetated all the way around the edges. And when you end up having a situation like this, it's kind of like the last breathing gasps of an aquatic system before it becomes terrestrial. That's a natural process. That's succession happening. Mm-hmm. And there are times when we apply aquatic weed controls and whatnot, because we just, it's like you have cultural eutrophication. We have all of our pollutants and nitrogen and whatnot filling up the pond at a very rapid pace. This pond, it doesn't have like a lot of houses and whatnot or development around it per se. And it really is kind of almost, really at the end of its life, this pond. And so what's proposed is putting in herbicides presumably almost every year, and just, re-upping it, and, 9 years of it. And what we're going to do is keep this, roughly 3 foot deep, small, shallow body of water from filling in under its natural process. And yet there's the poor Mojos. We got maybe like the view. And I'm like, this is like, if ever there was a place where we should probably let Mother Nature take its course, maybe this could be it. And I have a hard time, I've been, thinking about this thing kind of all day. And it's like, I don't know, it's a problem. You basically are using sonar and killing vegetation, and the vegetation is going to die. and it's going to rot. It's going to have it's going to impact DO in that.
No, it's not.
The vegetation is going to die, right?
Yes, but it's not going to die fast or quickly because sonar takes 90 days. So it senesces at a rate slower than it would in the fall when all plants senesce. So it's a very slow die off. It's not fast. It takes many days, 45 days before you'll see any death. And so it's a slow progression.
You also are proposing possibly the use of diquat.
Possibly, if needed.
If needed, and it's something that I know we were using drums of it back in 1974. It's an old herbicide, and
here it's just 1 gallon over a 1.2 acre area.
Really, really well, and then even in your description, it calls for a pretty quick kill off.
Right, but keep in mind, Bill, that it's when you apply the diquat, we wouldn't be applying it to 1.2 acres. You would just apply it to the stands of plants that are not growing or that are resistant to the floridome. So for instance, if you get another species in there that tends to do better or builds up a resistance to floridome, you need other tools to work with. Otherwise, you've gone through this effort to maintain open water habitat, and then you have no other options under permit that you can use in the instance of another plant coming in or a resistance occurring. So it's just smart to have more than one tool in the toolbox.
You did mention that Potamogeton species pondweed was your primary target species. In my boots, I went out and I've got books for differentiating myriaphyllum from ceratophyllum. Ceratophyllum being coontail.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the difference, but the place was loaded with, I want to call it coontail, that brown puffy stuff. Yep. And it's not Potamogeton. You got a lot of weeds, dense weeds, multiple species of weeds.
Coontail is definitely an invasive. So when we went out, just to caveat that, we went out in the fall of the early spring of this year for our initial assessment. And all we could really catch was the Potamogetons. We will be going out again, assuming this gets approved this spring, to get a map that we would then give to the contractor to work off of. It would go to the commission for them to use and have on file. And then our recommendations would be implemented within the confines of the permit. And then we'd have a year-end report to show you what plants survived, what plants are doing quite well. If you look at the picture on the map behind me, that pond is a pond I've been managing for 9 years. That's down in Newport. It's a coastal pond. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? And so that pond has had herbicides on and off throughout those 9 years. Most years we don't treat, but when we do, we do. And you can see we maintain a good, healthy balance of open water habitat within the system. And it's a 6 foot deep pond. It's 20 acres, but we keep it looking like a natural pond. That's the goal there. And I happen to like that pond. So that's why it's in the background of my screen there. But it's I'm not looking to nuke the pond. I'm looking to maintain a good, valued open water habitat. And to be honest, the interests of the Act do not include recreation at all. Swimming, boating, that's not the purview of the Wetland Protection Act, any more than aesthetic views and enjoyment are. So the goal here is to maintain an open water pond. And that's what the owners of the pond want. So that's what we're seeking a permit for, is to maintain an existing structure or system.
Thank you, Carl.
Yep.
So in reading some of the background here, again, I'm going to second Dr. Hearn that he is an expert in obviously limnology, which this is part of, and the natural succession of a shallow body of water to eventually naturally evolve into a swamp as opposed to open water. But the question that I have, Mr. Nielsen, is the background here says this might be a potential vernal pool. Are there documented fish species in this puddle?
No, I haven't documented them.
You yes or no?
No, I haven't documented them.
So it's potentially a vernal pool.
There's a potential, but to be a vernal pool, it needs to dry up pretty routinely.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It needs to be.
I was going to add a couple more.
Don't interrupt me.
Sorry.
It has to be absent of fish predators so that amphibians and other things can limit. So my question here is, and then I'll give the floor back to you, is what is the purpose of the open water habitat? What species is this going to benefit for the biodiversity of this area?
My turn?
Yeah.
Insects, clams, snails, frogs, amphibian eggs, any of that would be benefited with an open water habitat.
I would disagree. I have a PhD in aquatic sciences, and I have myself certified a number of vernal pools in Massachusetts. And frankly, I disagree with that. Vegetation in a very shallow pond such as this, or I would even call it a vernal pool. It's not a pond at this point because I don't think you have any fish in it. That in fact, the vegetation provides an abundance of cover and habitat for aquatic insects and amphibians that would be using it either for for breeding or for their adulthood. But this is not a pond. And I agree with Dr. Hearn that the application of herbicides seemingly forever to change the look of a filling in puddle is not something that this commissioner feels is appropriate. This is an herbicide. It is altering a natural succession of all the bodies of water at some point in time in most of North America, certainly the northern part of North America, to eventually fill in and become a wooded swamp. So I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would, a couple of points there. You know, natural succession is something that does happen. I acknowledge that. The pace at which it happens can be accelerated by humans. Slowing that pace is part of the allowance that's given under the Wetland Protection Act for management of open water habitat. And the reason is eutrophication, which is the filling in of ponds with aquatic vegetation, occurs to the detriment of aquatic species. So a little bit of vegetation is great for aquatic species. Excessive aquatic vegetation stifles those species and decreases oxygen availability, which they need. So we're just trying to strike that balance. The owner of the pond wants to keep it as an open water system. It's natural to have lightning strike the town center and the fires to burn. You still put it out, you slow it down, you do things to stop the natural progression, which is, lightning strikes and fires. We put those out. Same thing here. We're just looking to maintain the system. The next owner might decide that they don't want to maintain it, and then that is not perpetuity. It ultimately will continue to senesce or grow and fill in over time. That's not going to stop. They're not proposing to dredge the pond. They're not proposing to make it into something that it's not. They're not trying to make it into trout habitat. They're not trying to make it into a water ski park. It's really just trying to maintain a natural system that has open and healthy waters for birds, fish, and aquatics. Not fish if they show up, but the pond dries periodically. They could show up.
Thanks, Carl.
The reason there's no fish is there's no inlet and outlet, and the pond has dried. But over the last 20 years, there's been 2 or 3 times when it's dried up. And so that's, but the excessive vegetation is there. That's not typical of vernal pools. Excessive growth of potamogetans is typical of a more native, natural ponded system. That's
Thank you, Carl.
the way it is.
Larry?
Thank you, Carl.
Yes.
I understand that there's 6 property owners that border this pond, and that the Mojos are the dominant one in terms of taking the horse reins by the horse, whatever you call it. And in this particular case, all of those people signed consent to have this project done. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I've not heard a single word yet about any harm to the environment or any damage to the environment. How would you address that if somebody said, whatever you propose to do is detrimental to the environment? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, again, our goal is not to do detriment. Our goal is to do a limited treatment using a very mild herbicide to strike a balance with aquatic plants and open water habitat. The treatment isn't to be annual. It's ultimately to get away from the herbicide treatments by using fluoridone, which is systemic. And as long as the permit is maintained and it allows Mr. Mojo to go back and do the treatments as needed over the upcoming years, the balance will be easier to keep with less and less herbicide over time as you deplete that seed bank from the potamogetans. If you have the coontail in there, that'll be taken out right away with the fluoridone over time. So it's got to start.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I'm not disputing what Pete Sampu and Bill Hearn have argued or said. That's their domain. And this is a situation where a property owner is being responsible to come forward with a proposal, and property owners have rights. And in this particular case, that's the way I'm seeing it. And they've made a fair proposal, and you're supporting it. So I thank you for that presentation.
Darcy?
Yes, thank you. So I have a question as far as, and this kind of came up when we were dealing with the Red Lily Pond and their term of the pond lilies being invasive, which we were saying they aren't. That's part of that water system and habitat. But when you use the word invasive plant in this pond, when we deal with, I'm sorry, what?
Nuisance? I use the word nuisance. I don't use the word invasive. These aren't invasive plants.
That's what I wanted to have a little clarification as far as when we deal with hydrilla, that came up from the south. It was carried either in a boat propeller or attached to a bird flying when, carrying a fish or whatever. But, and that could choke out the existing plants. So what I'm hearing are the plants that you want to go after are actually natural plants in a pond system, but there's just too many of them. Are they choking out some of the other ones? Can you just clarify that? Because I think that would be...
They have the potential, if allowed to grow to excess, to one plant dominating the system and choking out others and creating those low oxygen conditions that I talked about. The permit that we're asking for is to control nuisance aquatic vegetation, which is allowed under Ecological Restoration Limited Project. So that's what it doesn't have to be an invasive or an exotic species that you're controlling. It's just excessive weed growth. And that's generally defined as anything more than 25% of the surface area of the pond.
Okay. So I would just, I would support something like that. What was I going to say? As far as the retreatment, it would have to be, you'd have the 3 years under an order of conditions. You can extend it and get another 3 years, possibly get a second extension. But then there would come a point that you'd have to reapply again. I have a little concern with the dicot. I'm not familiar with that. I'm a little uncomfortable. I feel better with the sonar.
If you want to take the dicot out, we're fine with you taking that out. But we can always come back, because we're going to have presumably a relationship over the period where we're giving you reports, you're looking at them, we're making recommendations each year. And if you want to, if our recommendation is to the client that we need to come in and talk about use of dicot for whatever the purpose, or a different herbicide, if that's the case, we can have that discussion and amend the permit at a later date if you prefer that approach rather than one-stop shopping like we've proposed here.
Okay, so I know you sent me, and thank you, you sent me the information on, it's the pond and lake connection was the contractor.
Yeah.
When they
Go ahead.
Oh, I just to say, when they do the report, each year they would be saying whether they've left the 25, I'm sorry, it's up to 25.
We would probably do that report. So the difference here is that, my role is I'm a certified lake manager. My background is in lake management. I've been managing lakes and ponds in primarily Massachusetts for the last 30 years. The work is not done by me or my company. It's done by a contractor. So we would be the ones reporting to you. We'd be the ones giving you the information. They would be doing the work. And we'd be evaluating how effective that work is and whether they're doing a good job or a poor job, and making recommendations to the project proponent, whether they should continue to use this or contractor or not, as well as to the commission on what things we need to do each year and whether or not the program's working or, should be amended or suspended. So
are you there? So for the day that they would be doing the 20 parts per billion, you would be there that day, and then you do you'd be the one doing the water test. Okay. But you test to make sure that it stays at that amount for the 60 days.
They would do the testing for the treatment. If you think of it this way, they're putting in a dose that they need to maintain. They send samples out to a lab that tests and confirms. So in 20, usually they test once a month. So they would come back in a month. And if it drops down to 15 parts per billion, they might give a booster treatment, or they might wait a little and put in a booster treatment in 30 more days. And so they would, over the 90-day period, they basically come back a couple times, check it, take a sample and see where it's at. If it drops quickly, they would give the booster treatment sooner. If it drops more slowly, which I suspect in this pond, it will drop very slow or not at all, because there's no outlet. The only way it drops is from, excessive rainfall onto the pond itself, diluting the concentration. So if you get you put it in June and you get a big rainfall in the end of June, you're going to need to do a booster treatment. But if you don't get those big intensive rains, they might never have to do a booster treatment at all. And that's what the contractor wants. They want to put in as little herbicide as they can, because it costs them money to do it. So that's the approach. And then we would look at those test results and include that in the report. But our role is really going out before the treatment and at the end of the season to document what's there before treatment and what's there after treatment and how effective was the treatment.
Okay. And the only thing I would ask for is, if this got approved. So as far as something in writing that you would be able to reduce the width of the access location, and a clarification of exactly where it is. And then I guess if the state's saying 1-to-1 replacement, if it was just written in the special conditions that instead of replacement, when you're done after the order of conditions or after the availability to extend it, then it get replaced, location.
There's really not a plan to, we're not cutting and rubbing the material down to the pond. It's really just, trimming back the vegetation so access can be achieved at a consistent location. So we would just let that regrow at the end of at the expiration of the order of conditions.
All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions. Yeah, I just have a little concern on the dicot, but otherwise, I would support
if you feel that strongly about it, we can, put in a condition that dicot can't be used. And, if you want to condition the path to be 4.5 feet wide at a maximum, we can make that the condition and live with that.
I think I mean, as I'm listening, I think we don't have any experience in terms of dicot. I'd rather remove it, and then in the annual report, if you make any recommendation to use this stuff, we can talk about it at that time. The other thing I just want to ask, when the contractor is getting the testing done, would you be overseeing those numbers to help them to decide whether to adjust the dose up or down?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I didn't hear that when you trying to explain it, because you just say that they will take the results and then adjust the dose, and then you just take that data to do the annual report. So that helps me a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pete?
So in the written narrative and in the verbal discussion we've had, there has been repeated, although I think it's been cleared up, that the open water habitat is good for fish. We put to rest that there is no fish in this place. It is a vernal pool. There's no access for fish to get in there. I suspect not only for drying up that there's the absence of fish, but if there is an ice cover, not this winter, but there's an ice cover under such very shallow conditions, the water goes anoxic fairly quickly with an organic matter in such a shallow body of water. My question comes in, or my observation, again, in this repeated claim of open water habitat being beneficial to organisms, is really the complete lack of specificity in terms of what organisms are we talking about. And again, I respectfully disagree from a professional standpoint that open water is better for insects, that open water is better for amphibians. Quite contrary, having more cover, having these coon-tail aquatic plants, having this biodiversity, this three-dimensional structure within the shallow water column, that is much more beneficial for amphibian life and for insect life. So when a claim is made repeatedly that habitat is better, I've not seen any evidence, any scientific evidence. Again, I have a PhD. I'm looking for scientific evidence for the claims that are being made here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Larry?
Thank you. I want to make two quick comments, and Carl, if you want to respond, that's fine, and Darcy as well. First of all, I think if ever there's a prototype here, it's Lake Elizabeth and Red Lily Pond in terms of the one that we've heard the most of. The second thing deals with diquat. I had to look it up here to see how it's spelled, D-I-Q-U-A-T, and in that sense, I recommend that the condition state that in the event a dicot is recommended, that the applicant and or the contractor can contact the commission and state why, and it should be something that doesn't have to come back to us. In other words, it's built into as a separate condition, but it's not to be done until the need is expressed and then it's signed off by staff. That's how I recommend it be handled, rather than having it eliminated, because there's reasons here why a different product may be suspect or unsure about, but that's also because of the fact that, in my opinion, on the commission for almost 20 years, almost 18 years now, this is the best presentation we've had that makes sense to lay people as well as scientists. So I'd like to see it kept in place rather than just wiped off the map. And that's how I'm looking at it. So thank you very much. And Carl, if you have any comments, please feel free to make them.
John?
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, I think we've talked about it enough. I can say that eutrophication and excess of aquatic plants is really what we're trying to control. We're not trying to eliminate plants. I 100% agree that aquatic plants in three-dimensional structure are beneficial. We're not managing the pond to eliminate plants. I've seen a lot of vernal pools with aquatic amphibians in them and no plants. We're not trying to create that here. We want the aquatic plants. We just don't want wall-to-wall, bottom-to-top plants that cause low oxygen DO sags within the pond when they get too hot. I can document that. I mean, if you really want to see reports and data, I can supplement this application with data showing that aquatic plant biomass, when excessive, reduces aquatic health because it reduces oxygen levels, and it stunts a lot of aquatic species, not just fish. So I'm happy to provide that data. That's easy enough if that's the commission's desire.
John?
Yeah, for me, Carl, I don't think that I need to see that. I think the presentation you made has been quite good. I think I heard Bill and Peter say, well, maybe it should go its own natural way. But under the law, as I understand it, our job is to approve a project if it can be conditioned without deleterious negative impact on environmental concerns. I don't see that here, Bill and Pete. I really don't. You may want it to go back to let it evolve into a natural state, but that is not our decision. That's just what you guys want. I don't think we have the legal authority to do it. So I would clearly support this. I think I sort of disagree with Larry. I think, Carl, you agreed to take that out, the dickwire out, and I think we should just do that to make it easier. You can always come back. With that, I'm ready to move on and vote on this project.
Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None? Let me try this condition and see how it goes from there. If there's anything that I'm missing, let me know that we can add into it. Could I have a motions to approve this project subject to the following? 1, reduce the access path width to 4.5 feet, and that would be approximately 378 square feet of the served area. And second, the contractor will be the pond and the lake connections, and TRC is the lake management consultant in this project. If there's a change in terms of the consultant or the contractor, a written notification to the staff should be sent. Thirdly, the solar dosage should be kept at 20 ppb. Next one is provide a written notification prior to any follow-up treatment after the initial treatment. And the last condition will be the annual report for 3 years and to be prepared by the TRC.
And the staff needs to have directions in terms of exactly how to get to that path. So the staff has access.
And access directions to this project, to the staff.
Did you say anything about dicot?
I took it out completely.
With that, I'd say I would make that motion, Tom.
I didn't hear you take it out completely, but I think it should be put in the way I suggested. Delia and I are going to disagree. We've done it for years.
Yeah, we have, Larry, and I think the applicant has already agreed to take it out.
Okay, I understand.
So I'm not sure it's worth fighting, but the motion was made. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, but Tom had not said he'd remove it, so
all
go
we
ahead.
say is that we are taking it out for now, and then he can come back with the annual report and see whether they need to use that chemical, and then we can approve it at that time. So
that's fair. We can work with that.
So I make the motions and we amend it with what Louise said. They add the directions to the staff so that they can access that.
And I made that motion, Tom. So I need a second.
Second. Roll call.
Sampu.
No.
Morin.
Yes.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
I would say it's not an emphatic no, but I am torn, and I think I'm going to go with no.
Gilmore. Aye. Foster.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-2.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be in touch.
Yes. The next NOI is Christopher Sanford, Thomas W. Sanford Jr., Irrevocable Trust proposed elevated deck expansions at 528 Craigview Beach Road, Centerville, as shown on Assessors Maps 246, parcel 071. Dan?
Yes. Unmute. Okay. Good evening, Dan Ojala from Downkeep Engineering. Let me pull up my screen so we can get right into it. This is the locus map. This is a rather large lot with a very small house on it. We're at the intersection of Strawberry Hill Road and Craigville Beach Road, and that's the length. There is a the headwaters to a creek is on our eastern border, and there's I guess I'd characterize as a pretty large, shrub swamp wetland out behind us. Here is the overall plan. You can see Craigville Beach Road to the south, Strawberry Hill Road to the west. There's some kind of a sewer easement. I don't know if that's a pump station or something over there. There's a good amount of upland on the west side and the south. And there's an old house that's here. It was here on a 1946 land court plan. I'm not sure how old it is, but very, very ancient. And there's a small deck off the back. There is a lawn that goes pretty close to the wetland. Again, it's a sloping lot. It's fairly high for this area anyway, elevation 15. The top of the foundation of the house is almost 17. And then there's a little walkout in the back. And so this is the back of the house here. And what the owner would like to do, and you can see there's just a nice rough Cape Cod-y lawn. It's not a manicured turf or anything like that. But nonetheless, we'll be displacing some of that, and we're going to introduce a deck into this area here, which is on the east side of the deck. We're looking south here at the back of the house. This is the only real viable area for a deck on the property that isn't already deck. It is fairly close to the wetland, but you guys do have in your regulations an ability to grant variances for work that's close to the wetland if you do a 4-to-1 mitigation to compensate for that. And where we have an elevated deck, and it's well up, it's just over a lawn, so it's displacing an area that isn't exactly high habitat, going to connect the existing deck. And again, it's a very modest structure with a Cape Cod lawn. And here's what you get instead of that. So the mitigation calculations are in the 0 to 50 from 752 to a 940 for an increase of 188. You have a multiplier of 4 within that 50. So there's 752 square foot required, and we're actually pulling up a little bit in excess of that, 760 square. Well, actually, we're going all the way up to 830 square foot of mitigation. So that's all along this edge of lawn, which is fairly close to the wetland. You're getting a nice strip, and the owner actually chose out his own plants. He's a bit of a gardener, and we've got all off the native plant species. We sent him the list, and it seemed appropriate to us to have those planted. So you've got 830 square foot of mitigation for a little 12 by 17 elevated deck. Again, as was stated earlier, decks aren't particularly hardscape. There's no roof over it. It is pervious, but we'll consider it hardscape nonetheless, and you get the benefit of a 4-to-1 increase, whereas if we walked away, you wouldn't have that 830 square foot of mitigation. So we think it's a good project. It's a win-win. The owner can afford to pull up the lawn, and you guys will get a better buffer for the wetland, and the environment will be improved. There is a river, like I say, the brook, headwaters to one of the creeks. We're just nick into the outer. I think there's about 5 square foot in the outer riparian. But again, they look at a 1-to-2 mitigation ratio, which we're well in excess of that, or even 1-to-1, but we're 4-to-1. So easily meet that. There's a state coastal bank, which you guys don't really concern yourselves too much with. There's a gentle slope. It'll continue to maintain the floodwaters. There's no open water or anything nearby to make it a local bank. And again, it's over an existing developed area. It's up in the air. It's pervious. And you're getting 4-to-1 mitigation. So I know you're running late tonight, so I'll leave it at that. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Louise?
I'm wondering if you want to have some demarcation in terms of locating the edge of the mitigation that you're offering.
Yeah, would be happy to put posts. We'll select from the nice list that was sent to me for one of those methods. Would be fine with that condition.
Thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner?
Just Yeah, just comment in. My GPS said that 528 Craigville Beach Road didn't exist. In the entrance to the driveway with the number and the name, I didn't see it marked. So if you just sort of kind of pay attention to that, that would certainly help when we do our site visits, Dan. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's a great project.
But we may have forgotten the white stake on this one, but it was all staked out other than that.
Yeah, it was. Okay. Thanks, Dan.
I did see the white stake on the road.
Oh, you did?
I did.
My GPS said 528 doesn't exist. I don't know. It took me a while to find it.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. Cool. So Dan, we have 752 square feet of mitigation, but we only have 28 plants. I think I'm reading this right. Is that true?
Yeah, we put them on the spacing that was recommended, as far as I know. There's 14 ferns, 8 dogwoods, and 6 high bush blueberries. Yeah.
So I'll actually maybe go to someone who's got more understanding than I with respect to size of plants, because we're looking at about 27 square feet per plant on average. And I don't know, my size 1 pot, 3 pot, and 3 pot. So Darcy, maybe you can help me. Are these enough plants to actually provide an improved buffer?
I don't have a problem with what he's offering for the project being a cantilever deck. I mean, you could bump up the sweet fern to something a little larger, but I support this project. I think we're getting a lot of mitigation for something that it's a cantilever. There's lawn underneath it. So
will the sweet fern and some of these other things get bigger or expand their
yeah, they fill in. They fill in.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
Darcy, you don't want to upsize the sweet ferns to size 2 or 3?
I'm not sure they sell them in a different way. I'm fine with this project. That the property owner wanted to have the sweet fern, I would support it on this. It's not like one of the big mitigation areas that we have. So it's 1 row. I'm good.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, this mitigation area is not going to be mowed, mulched, or otherwise. I mean, following up on Pete's concerns, I mean, we are going to allow natural vegetation to grow in amongst these X number of pots. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I would even be a little more concerned that the existing vegetation behind it does not swallow this up. I would say that they may have to do a little hand clipping to keep the Phragmites out of it. So, I wouldn't want them to have them be spending a lot of money, because some of these might be disturbed with the vegetation growing back in. The demarcation that Louise mentioned is a good idea.
Yeah. Right.
Any other question from the commissioner? 10:18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to the receipt of a revised plan showing the demarcation?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Byrne,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Sampu,
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
The next NOI is Assembly Required LLC proposed site improvement, including a stairway, landing, and walkway reconfigurations and after the fact approval for a shed installations, deck expansions, and proposed mitigation planting at 120 East Bay Road, Osterville, as shown on the Assessors Map 140, Parcel 163. Sean?
Good evening. Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. Just to give you a little background as to how we got here. The applicant's tenant. They own I think you're familiar with the assembly required property and all the work that's been done on that. This is one of their tenants for the caretaker's house. And they were doing some renovations on the inside. The building inspector required a new staircase, which is part of this application, because the existing stair did not meet the code requirements. Around the same time, Emil had gone out there and done his walkthrough for one of the certificates of compliance and noted that the shed on the property went back to the office and noted that it did not have a permit. So that appeared without a permit. So we went out and took a look to measure up the shed because we didn't have it on our existing conditions plan, and noted that the rear deck, which is also highlighted in yellow on your plans, appeared. So we did the history of that to see if that obtained a permit, found that the tenant did not obtain a permit for that as well. We approached the property owner with the information. The property owner was surprised that there was no permits pulled for these two projects and asked us for a recommendation. I suggested that they bring everything forward to the commission, get it out all on the table, and with all the work that they've done on the property and with hopefully with a 4-to-1 mitigation for this work that was done by their tenant, that you all would hopefully have good comments for everything that they've done with the Parker's Pond and them coming forward with the proposal that is before you. So what you're seeing now, hopefully you're looking at the site plan that I have up in front of the screen.
Yes.
Okay. So here's that shed. We have this is the inlet to the stream. So let me just jump back real quick and zoom in. So we have essentially the back edge of the marsh and then the pond. We have a BVW that runs along. There's some salt marsh within that area that flows through the culvert. And then we have land subject to coastal storm flowage and a somewhat inland, but Barnstable coastal bank, as this is subject to tidal action. So we do have a Barnstable coastal bank that you see here. It isn't much of a bank. It's pretty relatively flat slope. It's not eroding, but still you do have a 50-foot buffer to that bank. And what you're seeing in red here is the 50-foot, this is the 50-foot buffer to the bank, and the other 50 is the 50 to the BVW. So this is the small staircase that we started out with, coming in with an RDA until we found out about the shed, and then ourselves found out about the existing deck. There was a stoop out back with a stair, and it looks like they expanded that on the backside. And again, the shed appeared and did not have a permit. One thing to note, when we staked out the mitigation area, it was a surprise to us that the mitigation that we're proposing, which is in the dark green, you saw some stakes that were in the existing mitigation that had been planted by Wilkinson. Well, Wilkinson expanded their footprint unbeknownst to us. So it's really the mitigation that they put in is more than what was required. It's about where this yellow line is. So you may have seen some of the pink stakes that were flagged inside that mitigation. So our recommendation is to go back out and survey that recently planted or within the last several years planted mitigation, and then shift our 900 square feet of mitigation further into the lawn, creating a greater buffer than was anticipated even with this work, knowing that they built it out a little further than they were intended to. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
One quick question, Darcy, do we need demarcations?
Yeah.
So we just,
yeah. I did talk to Sean, and I think what he's offering is great as far as the additional mitigation, and we did talk about a revised plan needing demarcation.
Yeah, so isn't there a line of rocks already there? And if you just move the rocks to the new location,
right
yeah,
where I was
they
going,
are.
right where I was going. Yep.
Okay.
So they did a nice job of demarcating the existing, right, and we'll just shift those out.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually, I mean, since those have gone in, we have been a little stricter on what size we're expecting, but they really have been honoring these. So I would say, I know these aren't maybe 1.5 feet high, but this time I would honor them. because they were already existing. They don't have to go switch them out to something else. So just have on the revised plan, just say move existing rocks forward.
Will do.
Yeah. Okay. Bill?
With only one exception, I think this is a good project. I have a problem with the idea of a shed being built within the 0 to 50 buffer, and then retroactively saying, can we mitigate for that? It doesn't ring well with me, and it doesn't look like the shed, which is probably, I'm thinking, a relatively small thing. Can that be like moved into
that's the first thing we looked at, Bill, is the location of that shed and where could we move it to? And to move it outside of the 50, are you guys seeing my screen again? Hold on a second.
Not yet.
All right, let me just jump back and share my screen. That's the first thing we looked at, was where can we move this thing outside of the 50? And I had a discussion with Darcy to just questioning the coastal bank and whether it's not, and it does meet the definition because you do have tidal waters immediately adjacent, even though it's not out at the ocean. But this is the 50-foot buffer here to that bank. Here's the driveway, and these lines are the setback lines. The sheds are required to meet the setbacks, or otherwise we would tuck it right over into this area here. The only other spot is right out in the front yard. So it's really limited.
Can't you just move it? That red line, isn't the red line the 50 feet from the edge of wet?
Yeah, that's 50 feet from the BVW, correct.
Can't that just simply be bumped,
Yeah, it could be moved three feet forward. I think what they were trying to do is just line it up with the edge of the house. It is entirely within lawn area, so I'm not really sure how much. I know it's a numbers game to be outside, but I don't think physically you're going to see anything different on the ground by moving it, 3 or 4 feet, other than just getting it in a different part of the lawn area as the lawn does run down to the bank. And with the increased buffer, I would think that would provide a greater habitat and buffer to the human activity as well.
I mean, I see the deck. It's there as well, and yet I'm inclined to say, yeah, whatever, leave it there. It'd make it smaller. It'd mess you up. But I can't. I guess if you could just move that shed out of the 0 to 50, because I don't think that building something and then asking for permission afterwards feels right to me. And it's a matter of 3 feet or something. If you could do that, I would be happy.
Thank you. The shed can be moved, right?
It can.
Yeah, why don't you move it outside the 50? That would make us happy, I guess.
We can do that.
Larry, thank you.
Sean, you feel you can move that shed? It's a good size shed.
It is a good size shed. If we'd like to continue, I can continue to explore that with the applicant to see how hard it would be to move. The other aspect, I know there's a septic tank out in front of the shed that I wouldn't want to cover up. Yeah, I guess if it's that important, we could continue to the next hearing and I could explore moving that shed to 3 feet. And it looks like that's what it's about, 3 feet forward.
Well, I think another plus, and I can understand Bill's concern, but my other comment, when you showed that picture with the stones along there, I remembered when all the work was being done in Parker's Pond, is that what they call it on the other side? When all that work was being done, that area was really worn down and in pretty trashy shape. And what's now been done, it seems to be somewhat elevated a little bit, and it's going to reduce the impact of water coming in off the creek if it does overflow. But then it drops off this. We don't have a topography right in this area behind it, but it's not. It drops off there. By that I mean the chance of there being any adverse environmental effects from water or the impact on this small portion of the 50 zone I just recommend that you look into it. And the process of moving this is going to involve some heavy lifting equipment to get it lifted and move it. So I'm going to let you leave it up to that. But those are my thoughts and concerns about it.
Can I say something?
Of course you can.
Yeah, it's as far as our guidelines and how people ask staff and everything about permitting. When somebody comes in and wants to have a shed between the 50 and the 100, we allow that as an RDA. He's filing this as a notice of intent and providing mitigation. So I understand that somebody did this after the fact, but I think Sean did a great job in this application, and I think we're getting the additional mitigation, and I recommend it just stay and we get the extra mitigation. That's just my 2 cents.
Thanks,
I agree.
John?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, Darcy. Bill, I understand where you're coming from as a matter of principle, but go to the site. Well, I'm sure you did go to the site. You go to the site, you look at the amount of mitigation that's there that was done earlier. You look at what they're proposing here. You look at moving this thing, the 3 feet that you're talking about, and it's still within a 50, just not the 50 to the EBW there. It just seems to me it's an anthill. I think we're gaining a lot more with this proposal, just the way it is. I think we're being excessive. I think we're being unfair to ask them to move it. So I'm okay with the way it is right now. And I agree with Darcy on that.
Thanks, John. George?
Yeah, I just go along with Darcy and John. I just don't see how moving that shed and then having lawn in the spot where you moved it from makes a whole lot of sense. I'm for it as it stands.
Thanks, George. Luis?
Yeah, I would leave the shed where it is.
Okay. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the demarcations?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Vern?
I'm going to have to say no.
Lee?
Aye.
Abadili?
Aye.
Foster?
Aye.
Gilmore? Aye. Moran?
Aye.
Sampu?
What was
I'm trying to.
Is that Darth Vader?
An I, but a hesitant I. Because Bill made a damn good point.
Mine's kind of a hesitant no. It's like, but the principle of it, it's like you build it and then you ask for permission. It's like, come on.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you all for your time and
Good luck, Sean.
Thank you.
The last NOI of the evening, George Toybait, proposed in-ground pool, garage, in landscaping, and on-site sewage disposal system replacement at 70 Ocean Avenue, Hyannisport, as shown on the Assessors Maps 288, parcel 182-004 and 182-005. Hi, Mike.
Hello, everybody. Mike Ball from Marsh Matters Environmental. Nice to see you again. It's been a while. I am here representing the owner of the property and applicant, George Torbay. He is on the line. Pete McEntee of Engineering Works is also on the line. He was the preparer of the primary plan set. So this project is a pool and garage proposal with landscaping. The Torbays purchased this property last year. And are in the process of renovating a very old house, which was originally built in 1916, was rebuilt in 1984, and now they'd like to further renovate the property, which would include a pool. So I met George just briefly I'll just tell you, in the wintertime, he does admit he's very new to the conservation jurisdiction idea and process, and so in our conversations the last couple of months, I, explained to him what your interests are, what the Wetlands Protection Act interests are, what mitigation is, what hardscape in the buffer zone is. And in our discussions, we came up with a plan which we felt minimized the project footprint as much as possible and practical to put a pool and a patio in your jurisdiction. You've been to the site, you know the area is an open lawn area. A portion of it is within the 50-foot buffer to the top of a coastal bank. A portion of it is within the outer 50 feet of that buffer zone. The garage on the other side of the prop. Sorry.
Can you share the plan, the latest
I
plan?
sure can. I sure can. Hold on just a minute. Yep. Let's see. Let's get a share screen. Can you see that?
No.
Okay, hold on.
No.
Sorry. I always have a problem sharing screens. I don't know why. Hold on a minute. Share. One. That and
coming.
That. How about that?
Yeah.
Can you see that? Okay. All right. So I'm gonna Pete McEntee provided an existing conditions plan as well as a proposed conditions plan. So I'm going to blow up the proposed conditions here. You can see the existing house. It is a busy plan. Admittedly, there's a lot of resource areas here. There's a lot of overlapping jurisdictional boundaries. And I know the plans that we submitted were at 1:40 scale, which is not great to discern details, but we have today submitted a plan that was enlarged to make it a little bit easier. I know they're not in your hands, hard copies, but in any case, I'll blow this up as much as possible. So what I'd like to show you is where this pool is proposed. We've got the existing house. You can see that it's partially within the 50-foot buffer. In my notice of intent, I did provide you with photographs of the existing footprint. I'm going to bring that up. Let's see here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Can you see photos? Okay, so that for those of you who might not have seen the property, existing house, you can see the approximate footprint in blue here. It is really the only place, in my opinion, to put a pool and patio off the house. It's partially in the front yard, but primarily in this area between what is it actually fenced-in old cooking area. It's like an old fireplace cooking area that's going to be removed. This below here is the area where the garage is going to go with an apartment above. So both areas are in existing lawn area. With respect to resource areas, we have a town-defined coastal bank and a state-defined coastal bank. So the garage over here is within the buffer zone to the state-regulated coastal bank, okay, where we're proposing the garage and the stone parking area reconfiguration. Over here, where the pool is, this is where your town bylaw coastal bank or defined coastal bank comes into play. So we've got the blue flags being the town coastal bank, the blue dash line being the 50-foot buffer, and then you've got a 100-foot buffer here. Riverfront area associated with Stewart's Creek extends 200 feet onto the property. The proposed activities will maintain all vegetation within 100 feet of mean high water, but we are proposing work in the outer 100 feet of the riverfront area. This is not being proposed as a redevelopment. This would not meet a previously developed condition according to 310 CMR 10.58. So we're not proposing riverfront alteration under that specific standard. We're well under the amount of riverfront area alteration that the commission may approve. Obviously, it's not a right; it's something the commission may approve. Because of the amount of work in that lawn area that's within the top of the within the 50-foot buffer and 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank, we are providing mitigation. The landscape architect on the project provided what I thought was a really nice plan. This is more than I could potentially do for mitigation. This is showing what's provided. It's about 5,300 and change of mitigation involving some pollinator pockets here. And so what this is going to do is going to increase the buffer zone of vegetation between the top of the coastal bank, but also increase vegetated areas / non-lawn within the outer riparian zone of the riverfront area associated with Stewart's Creek. With respect to coastal bank function, the coastal bank itself is a fully vegetated, wooded landform. The project putting a pool here in this location will have absolutely no adverse impact on the bank itself. That bank, which is not directly adjacent to Nantucket Sound, it's adjacent to Stewart's Creek. That bank will continue to provide storm damage protection and flood control. As I mentioned, the entire 100-foot inner riparian zone of the riverfront area is met. What I started to say is when George and I talked about this project and I explained to him the interests of both the bylaw and the Wetland Protection Act, I did explain to him that it's imperative that we demonstrate that project in your jurisdiction be minimized in terms of alteration and impact as much as possible and practical. When we originally were looking at designs, we had much more hardscape as part of the project. We've whittled that down so that really the footprint is down to this area here. This is a 12-foot deep patio coming out of the house. This is an 18 by 40-foot pool. And then we've got an 8 by 8 spa off of that, or sauna, or what do we call it? A whirlpool, I suppose, off the edge of the pool. Pete McEntee did a nice job calculating what the mitigation requirements are. He shows that on the plan, but really the best way to review the mitigation plantings are to look at the landscape architect's plan, which is provided here. These are some of the plants that are provided. They all come from the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension list. I think the size at purchase or installation are appropriate. I think the amounts are appropriate. It's a pretty dense mitigation area. And as I mentioned, I think it will be an improvement over existing conditions in the riverfront area. Septic system is being replaced, but as you can see the leach field here, this is not within your jurisdiction. This obviously coming out of the house, there's some piping that's within your jurisdiction, but the tank itself, distribution box, and the leaching field are outside your jurisdiction. So really that wasn't part of the notice of intent. The notice of intent addressed garage, parking area, and pool area. I would like to say that this masonry patio bit here, this has been removed from the project. This was an old iteration. So the patio is only this portion that is between the pool and the house. This area has been removed. The last thing I'll just mention is there are some features on the property that are being eliminated that work into the calculations for mitigation. So we've got that kitchen area that's going, we've got a gazebo that's going, this really unusual pavement area is going. All of those areas are within your the coastal bank buffer. The brick walk in the back here is going as well as that shed right there. So overall, I think the project does improve upon existing conditions with respect to the riverfront and coastal bank buffer. And with that, I will happily answer any of your questions.
This afternoon, Mike also revised the plans to show the dimensions of the swimming of the pool and the patio and the spa. And even though it's not showing on this plan, but this afternoon we did receive a revised plan showing those dimensions. Louise?
I agree that it is the project represents an improvement over existing conditions, but I really have a problem with the location of the pool and the patio and the spa. And I'm thinking you've got a lot of space there. And I think, you could slide that. This is just a suggestion. You may have a more creative solution, but you could slide that pool down. I guess it it would be south. Would it be south? Yeah, south, and get it out of that buffer area. The other point is that you really don't have an undisturbed 50-foot buffer anyway, in terms of making a case that this is just, the only incursion. So I would encourage you to figure out how you can make that patio and pool and spa work further out from the buffer.
Thanks.
Do you want me to address, or do you want to go with commission members? More commission.
Do you want to address this before I go to John?
Yeah, I'll just say it is something we have discussed. Moving that pool south to get it entirely out of the 50-foot buffer puts it entirely in the front yard, puts it closer to that gas line.
Maybe you can put some plants around it so that it's not, visible from the road.
That's a possibility. I mean, we are dealing with a slope that begins there. It is something that George and I did talk about. I don't think it's a practical change. Me personally, I think this is a good location, or really the only location for the pool, given existing conditions. I listened to the previous hearing, and we always talk about existing lawn area. And we use that as a tool to say, well, this project should go here because it's an existing lawn. And that argument works only so far. But what I like to add to that is when we think about what the actual resource area is, which is a coastal bank defined by your bylaw regulations, moving that pool a little bit south, while it may mean more of it out of the inner 50-foot buffer, it has really no significant impact on the degree or perceived degree of impact on the resource area itself. That coastal bank is a fully wooded landform, adjacent not to the coast, but it's adjacent to Stewart's Creek. Putting a pool of water and some patio inside that 50-foot buffer to the top of that particular coastal bank, my professional opinion, it has no difference in terms of impact. So I start looking at this, well, what's practical? I understand your concerns about work in the 50, but given existing conditions, given the condition of the resource area itself and its functions, it's not a sediment source. It is really just serving the function of storm damage prevention and flood control. Those functions will be maintained fully, even with that pool where it's currently proposed. That's just my professional opinion, but I fully respect your concern.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. John?
Yeah, two minor questions first, and then I'd like to go back to the point Louise just raised. I didn't see pool equipment anywhere, Mike, on the plan. Maybe I missed it. Secondly, in your write-up, you said, well, there's not going to be a pool drawdown because if they need to empty that thing, they're going to hire a truck to come and pump it out. And I do really have a problem with that. So maybe you can address those two issues from a minor point of view. I think the biggest concern that I have is we have almost consistently turned down pools within the 0 to 50. Bill Hearn's about to give me a attaboy, Abo. But I really do think that, you may not want to put it in the front yard, but you can landscape it. There's a tremendous amount of yard available to move that pool and get it out of the 50 in the spa. So I have a much larger problem than I think maybe even Louise expressed with that issue.
Yeah, I'll just address real quickly. We did in the revised plan, we did put pool mechanicals here. There's some existing mechanicals, so that's there.
Okay, good. I didn't see it.
Regarding pool drainage, we did ask the Snyder Pools, who would be the contractor. They said because this is a fiberglass pool, they do not drain these pools because it would damage the fiberglass lining. So the pool is never completely drained. If for some reason that pool needed to be partially drained, a tanker truck would be the only way to do it. That's the way Snyder Snyder explained. I'm used to seeing drawdown pits shown, but in this case, it could be added as a backup. But I'm personally comfortable with their explanation that a fiberglass pool does not get drained, and that a standard procedure would be if they did need to take some water out, it would go to tanker.
I just get a little bit nervous, Mike, because, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to put a pump in a hose and just run it into Stewart's Creek. And it's, I'm very familiar with Stewart's Creek. It is in big trouble as it is.
It sure is.
I mean, so I really get a desire to protect that. I think that 50-foot really is important to it. I like the mitigation you offered. But still, I would like that pool out of the 50. And I think that property, I'm not going to design it like Louise was trying to do. I'm not that smart, but I'd get it out of there. As far as the pool drawdown goes, would it be possible to put in a backup drawdown system of some sort?
I think a pit could be shown. I think there's room for it. If we were to move that pool down or reduce the overall size, I think somewhere maybe south of the pool, something could be placed. Some big infiltration basin buried. I understand your concern. I agree about discharge to Stewart's Creek. That's a pretty imperiled estuary.
By the way, I have no problem with the garage situation. So
yeah, my focus is on the pool. I know the garage is not an insignificant feature in the stone parking, but that is within. Also within an existing lawn area. Yeah. So I really think our discussion is focused on the pool.
I would agree with that, Mike.
And I just when I looked at this and I understood how much George Torbay, the owner and applicant, really tried to make this as small as he could manage. And then, we're adding all that mitigation. It is a tremendous amount of mitigation in the riverfront area. I think on balance, I really do think this is an improvement over existing, but I fully respect your concerns over work in the 50. I know pools occur in the 50. They have occurred, and I know it's always a discussion, but on this particular project, given existing conditions, giving the attempt to really minimize the footprint, which I think we could do even a little bit more. I think we could bring that pool, that proposed patio down a little bit, move the pool a little bit towards the house, maybe go 10 feet instead of 12. I don't think it's possible from a practical standpoint to get it entirely out of the 50, given the slope that's there, the gas line. But
I have to say my experience, at least in the commission, yes, we have approved. I know there was like a lap pool within the 50, but that's on lots, but there was literally no place else to do it. And, sense of mitigation was required and blah, blah, blah. It just seems to me the size of this property, and yeah, there's a tremendous amount of front yard in that could be landscaped. It just really bothers me to approve a swimming pool within the 0-50 next to a body of water that is in such terrible, scary conditions.
I completely understand. Again, I focus on the what are resource areas we're talking about, proximity to resource areas. I'd feel different if this was a 50-foot buffer zone to a salt marsh, to a vernal pool, to a bordering vegetated wetland. Maybe it's me. I've been doing this a long time. When I see and hear commissions strongly defend a buffer zone to a coastal bank, that really provides two functions: storm damage prevention and flood control, right? Obviously, dune and beach nourishment if it's an eroding bank. I just see projects like this need to be seen not as a blanket, no work in the 50, but what are we proposing to mitigate the impacts? How are we making this site better? It's just me. I just have a pet peeve about buffer zone to the coastal bank. And most projects I review, and I do reviews for other commissions. And often my opinion is if the project is not adversely impacting the resource area functions itself, it meets performance standards. I fully understand your Chapter 704 requirements. But in this case, because we're not talking about working in the 50-foot to a BVW, to a salt marsh, to a vernal pool, I just think this should be seen in a slightly different view. But that's my professional opinion.
George?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, I too go along with what John was saying. I was concerned about this pump truck and the pool equipment. Now I see where the equipment's going. You've answered all that. You make a wonderful argument because of all the mitigation you've proposed. I too, though, would love to see if you could just squeak that back as much as you could, Mike. It would make it more palatable.
Thank you.
Coach, Larry?
This property has a lot of history on the area where the mitigation is, because there is a path from the cottage colony in behind that people use to get out there. And we had some hearings on this, more than a decade ago, where all this vegetation had been cut and was required to be restored. So, Mike, that probably is part of the good vegetation that you have there now. This aerial that you now have in front of us shows that pool halfway into the front yard. I don't know whether that really is the way it is. It seems to me that the spa could be swung around to the back of the pool, around on the north end of it, rather than the south. That might reduce it a little bit. I see. Oh, now it shows up better here. Okay. I really agree with Mike Ball's assessment of the coastal bank and the vegetation and the mitigation. I see some changes that should be considered. The repositioning of the spa, and I can understand how this could be moved further in a southern direction towards the street, and that might create some landscaping, whether it be I forget the name of all the different kind of trees that grow real big, but something like that. That's a possibility. Way on the other end, on the western end of this house, in behind where the parking is, that's another possible location, but maybe it's encountering another area, another zone to deal with. Here's the BVW back here. So is there room in there to put it? And is that even sensible? The other question that, Mike, you haven't articulated is that the pool could well be positioned where it is based upon the interior of the house. In other words, this may be the place which people would come and go from the house to the pool. That may or may not be a factor. I'm not nearly as adamant as John is or Louise is. I can see their points of view. I don't consider it nearly as significant as they do, but that's not to be expected. So any event, otherwise, I think that you've done a very good job of laying it out. You've done a good job of recognizing all the pluses and minuses, and it becomes a question of where the vote's going to fall and where your client may want it to go. So I hope that covers the things. I was going to ask Louise what reasons. She just said she didn't like it. Well, it gave us no reasons. I think John has covered her for that by giving plenty of reasons that he had, and she probably could just adopt those. But otherwise, I felt Louise hadn't given any particular reasons why. She just didn't like it there. So
we don't put pools in buffer zones.
Yeah, but all you had to do is say that. You didn't say it.
I think I did.
You did.
And I respect that opinion. I just, again, it's almost too easy to say that. And I think when you think about a property owner, an applicant who's trying to understand your decision, just saying a pool does not belong in the buffer zone is just avoiding the discussion about impacts to the resource area itself.
Well, the buffer zone is a kind of a sacred place.
It's a sacred place when it's fully vegetated and it provides a protective function to the resource area. A coastal bank buffer zone rarely provides protection to the functions that bank provides. And like I said, I feel differently about bordering vegetated wetlands, isolated freshwater wetlands, salt marsh. When it comes to coastal bank and a project clearly meets the performance standards, I think the project should be given consideration for approval because of the existing conditions, what's being proposed, what the actual impacts are going to be. In this case, my professional opinion, no impact on the function of the buffer zone. With respect to riverfront area, the mitigation will actually enhance the characteristics of that riverfront area. So on balance, I think the project as proposed does provide improved conditions over existing, but Louise, I fully understand and respect your opinion on the 50-foot buffer.
Thanks, Mike. Bill?
I visited the site, and one thing that you said, Mike, that is absolutely true. You have a very, very busy plan you gave to us.
Yes.
And I used, the yellow magic marker on the 50-foot buffer to the BVW. And the pool is not in that 0 to 50. It's on basically the edge of the 100-foot buffer, the 50 to 100. So it's on the outside. And when I went there, I guess I didn't have per se such heartburn over the pool, kind of almost in the 80 feet from the vegetated buffer. And there was a lot of mitigation that you were doing along that edge.
Yeah.
And so I came away, contrary to what John was suggesting, I did not have a lot of heartburn with this pool. In terms of the long-term, do we oppose a pool in the buffer? I would fight tooth and nail to keep it out of the 0 to 50 from the BVW. But here it's right on the edge. And so I guess I wasn't thinking that this was such a big deal. That being said, to the extent that it could be slowly moved out of the buffer, I'm all for that. And then lastly, I really do think that as we do with so many pools, we do put some kind of provision to whatever you call it, a pool drain or something to ensure that water isn't just somehow pumped out of the pool. I would definitely put something in for that.
Hey, Hearn, did I just lose my attaboy?
It's just, I don't know.
May I say something?
For the BVW, that's what I'm concerned about. And it's more like 90 or 80 feet from the BVW. Okay, go ahead.
We have to the plan to confirm that.
I'm wondering, Pete McEntee from Engineering Works. I'm the creator of this mess. I'm sorry. There's a lot of lines on there. So I know that, I believe the owner wanted to have that continuity between the pool and the house. That's why the pool is located where it is. If one of the major concerns about the location of the pool with respect to Stewart's Creek is that drainage problem, we certainly can put a 1,000-gallon leach pit out between the pool and the road so that it could be pumped directly to that if it had to be drawn down at all. So that's not a big deal. The other thing is, I'm wondering, if consideration could be made to the fact that both the state and the town regulated coastal bank rise well above the flood elevation. And so it's brought by definition closer to the edge of the clearing because of that slope, as opposed to, typically if it's a gentler slope, it's right along that flood elevation. So it's really the only resource area that is causing a large amount of mitigation.
Did you need a fence for that, by the way?
There's been some discussion about that. I didn't show a fence. The pool company said that it's not required for that because they have a cover that will go over it that's approved. I'm not sure that.
If I can add, I did get it when I got my response from Snyder Pools. This is a new thing for me as well, these auto covers. It is something that when an auto cover is installed, it does meet the legal requirements for a pool. So I've worked on, since COVID started, I've been doing so many pools, but this is one of those projects where they're proposing an auto cover, and apparently that means they do not have to have a full locked perimeter fence surrounding the pool.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
That's something new. We usually when we see the pool, we see a pool fence.
Yeah.
You may want to double check
too.
on the building department whether they need one or not with the auto cover stuff. So, Mike, how do you want me to do this? Continue? You think about it to discuss with the homeowner, whether you want to move the pool or how do you want to do it?
I know I have an idea. I know George Torbay is in the meeting. Would you give him just a second to provide a comment, just so he can introduce himself, just briefly?
Yes, George.
George, just unmute yourself.
Hey everyone, this is George. I'm the homeowner. Thanks for giving me a moment. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, as Mike was saying, because the house was built in 1916 and set far back from the road, our concern, obviously, pulling the pool forward towards the road would not really give any of the participants, in the pool any privacy. And that was our concern because, a lot of those folks are walking to the beach across the street. There's a lot of folks from Hyannis and Hyannisport walking to Keys Beach. So, you wouldn't really have any privacy. You can't put the pool in the very small backyard. There is no backyard. There's just an old stone patio that's been there forever. And so, as Mike said, if you pull the pool forward, you're hitting the gas lines possibly. But we were thinking too, what about if we reduced the patio next to the pool by 1/3? Would that give you the flexibility you needed if we still did the same amount of mitigation plantings, but reduced the patio by 1/3 of the size? Would you feel like that would be give you more of what you're looking for as far as less work in the buffer zones?
And we could even move mitigation north, to even increase more vegetative buffer between a revised pool footprint and the top of the coastal bank. I mean, I think that's something George and I could discuss, but that might open up that possibility.
Could you move the spa on the house side of the pool?
Oh, you're asking, John?
Yeah, I was wondering if you can take the spa and you put it in that bottom left corner of the pool as we're looking at it.
Right.
What, so all the Kennedys can drive by and look at people in the spot? Just kidding. I see what you're saying, John. I see what you're creatively thinking. How can we move?
Yeah, just a thought, Mike.
I know. Sorry, John.
Mike, this is only me thinking. If you move your pools to the south, let's say 5 or 10 feet, okay, you move your spa, and then you can have some shrub or something to hide the swimming pool, between the street and the pool. Would that work for you? And then because you look at your gas line, it's pretty strict until you hit your contour 22, right? So you stay away from that gas line.
Yeah.
I think that, we can't redesign it. I think further concerns, you guys should take a continuance and see what you can come back with. And by the way, just going back to Bill's point, if you could clarify exactly how much of the pool is in that 0 to 50, I thought it was more, Bill, than you did, but I could be very wrong on that.
We can make that very clear.
Just make it clear.
439 square feet.
439 square feet. Okay.
Yeah, multiply times 4.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's quite a lot. So, Mike, think about it. I just want to go to public comment before I come back to you. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None? Mike, do you want to do a continuance, and how much time do you need?
I think we're going to need a continuance, and we would go to the next hearing, which I believe is in 2 weeks.
Which is June 6th.
Yeah. George, while you're still on, George, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we need to
regroup and come back, but I'm sure on our next meeting, we can work something out where everyone feels comfortable.
Okay. Could I have a motion to continuance this applications to June the 6th? And can you sign the waiver form?
You asking me?
Yeah, Mike.
I'm asking George.
No, Mike, yeah, well, both of them.
I can sign a waiver.
Yeah, we have the form. Just contact Kim on
Okay.
getting the form, or it's on our web, I believe. So it has to be signed by the homeowner and you. So.
And this I forget. Is this new? Is this a new?
Yeah.
Yep.
Been a while. Yeah. Okay.
Having been burned once, Mike, we learn quickly.
Gotcha. I'll contact Kim tomorrow.
So I make the motions. Anyone? Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Van
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for your time and consideration. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you. We have one amended order, Sydney Horton, the amended order conditions to permit and upgrade an existing boardwalk and do some vista pruning at 417 Scudder Avenue, Hyannis, as shown on the assessors map 288 parcel 222. Gregory,
Yes.
go ahead.
We need to clean up the screen, Tom.
Yeah,
Who is that? Mike?
Mike,
I'm working on that. I think I just said you're going to be getting rid of his screen, and I thought it did. Hold on.
There you go.
Okay. Now I got to bring up the other one. Okay, we're ready to roll. Let me bring the next one up.
I can get started. Greg Drake from Outback Engineering and representing the applicant, Cindy Horton. We did the got an order of conditions. I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago for the new house and septic system at 417 Scudder Ave. But there was an existing boardwalk that was with the property when he bought it, and that was told was needed to do an amended order for that. So that's why we're back. And so basically, the existing boardwalk is a 3-foot wide, 40-foot long boardwalk that was there. There are also some pallets there that the previous owner put out towards the end. The boardwalk is laid right on top of the wetland. So we are proposing to put in a new boardwalk that's only extending it a little bit, making it 4-foot wide and getting it 18 inches off the ground. There's a detail that's at the top that shows what the boardwalk would look like, the new boardwalk. And also added another 4 feet to kind of cantilever over the water so that the applicant would like to be able to bring a kayak up to it, and as well as a canoe, so you don't have to step onto the wetland when you get into your canoe. And they're also looking to do some vista pruning as well for the back deck to have a better view of Schoolhouse Pond that's in the rear yard. And they do, all the pruning would be done according to the commission's guidelines that are that are posted online. So that's basically it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, or we can go from there.
Question from the commissioner.
just
Your boardwalk detail looks pretty good, and the vista pruning that you're asking for is our standard vista pruning guideline stuff. George?
Yeah, my only question was the amount of vista pruning. I think the boardwalk is great. You're comfortable with that, Darcy?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner? Channel Wicked, any public comment on this?
Vicky, did you have anything?
Yeah, sorry. So as the owner next door, we've seen some flags relative to the back of our property. Can you confirm the impact to 421 Scudder Ave?
I don't believe there will be any impact to that.
Because we've received a notice for an abutment, so I'm trying to understand what the impact would be relative to our property. And the flags do go behind our garage on the back side of it. And so if it's just pruning, I'm perfectly happy for that. Just want to make sure, just from a resale perspective, for any consideration that we would have on 421 Scudder.
That's with the pruning, just a standard with the pruning guideline stuff. I don't think there is any impact to your property.
Which is your, can you see my hand on the screen? Which one?
I can see your hand, yeah.
Is this your house or this one here?
No, so that house is 427 Scudder. We're the one that's actually in between. So the flags that follow through. So we share the driveway, this dark black line on the left-hand side.
Right there.
Nope, sorry. Yep. So if you come down and go to the right, so there's an existing house which is here, and then there's this extra house here. We're the house here with the patio and the deck. And then we abut the conservation land. 427 is the house that actually sits on School Pond. And to the left of us, if we're looking from the street side, there are two houses on the left-hand side of us. There's the main house, and then there's a smaller home. In between, we have a shared kind of driveway, which is to the conservation land, to School Pond.
Okay, so this is your existing house here. This is your last name here?
That's correct.
Okay. This is your shed. This is the driveway.
We don't, it's a garage, yes, it's a garage, yes.
Okay. And this is the driveway, the existing gravel driveway that's coming in. And what was your, I'm sorry, what was your question?
So I'm trying to understand, because we received an abutment letter, and as of late, we have flags that are behind our garage and kind of cut into it. So I'm just trying to understand. I think it's primarily pruning, and I'm just trying to understand that that is in fact true.
So you might be seeing, the surveyors might have flagged your property line here. The vista pruning, let me show you. This is the only place, this dotted line and this dotted line, they're going to vista prune over here.
I see. Okay.
And then this is where the boardwalk is going to come down. So I think you probably are seeing either the flagging for the property line or the staking for the property line. And then
there's property, and I think so there's blue, orange.
This is a work limit line. So I know that they had the work limit line staked. So you're going to see two different colors. You're going to see two different colors, one for the property line stakes and one for the work limit line. For when they were building the house, they should have their siltation fences here. And then this would be, there might have been staking for the existing path where the boardwalk is going to go down.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's perfectly fine. I just wanted to make sure that we had a full understanding relative to the markers that were.
Is there any possibility, Darcy, that they could have been a dig safe flags? When I was there, I saw some flags right where the path is going to go, but they were just innocuous ribbons on something. They really wasn't very clearly marked. So are they right? Paola, is that your name?
Yes.
Yeah, is it right behind this shed here? Is that where they are? Is it right at the back edge of that, or is it along the driveway? Where precisely are the flags?
They're sorry,
Miss Manzina, maybe you have a better. It's quite a while that I don't go over there. I remember something here behind the shed.
Okay.
And something at the beginning of the street, but I don't know if there is something in the between.
Yeah, so there's some at the forefront of the street at the kind of the
Like here?
here, the gravel drive, yes.
Yeah.
And then
Those
there's
are
some
probably survey
along.
stakes, yeah.
There's
Yeah,
survey
and
stakes
there's-
to the property line.
I think that's right. So there's some along the driveway, which I understood, or it was my presumption that those were survey stakes. And then there were some at the back of the shed, which I didn't understand because some were blue and some were orange. All the others were orange, so I assumed those to be property markers. And then the blue ones, I wasn't sure as to what that would be, because they actually do go in back of our shed, as it's noted here. So I just was trying to make sure that we had a full understanding in case there were any considerations, because the notice said it was an abutment, and I just wanted to make sure if there's any impact in case we ever were to sell the home, that we had a full understanding relative to what that would be.
Maybe they could talk to Darcy separately if there was some need to clarify.
Well, I'm not going to be the one to clarify what their stakes are, but I can tell you there's a work limit line here, and they might have this
Setback line.
Yeah, the dash line is like the
Setback line?
Yeah, setback line. They probably have them there, but I think they should be contacting Greg Drake to go over it.
I'm sorry, Darcy, you're right. That should be, Greg could contact them. They can contact Greg.
Yeah, they can contact us and we can let them know what, my guess is the limited work line behind there.
Yeah.
And definitely the orange is definitely survey stakes. And then the blue would probably be limited work line, or it could be a setback line, but I could check with our surveyors and we can provide any information you need.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public?
Yes, I am the owner of the other lot, the one with Luigi Taranto and Paola Rossi. And okay, I have to say I don't know very well how are the procedure, but I received this letter and I was wondering about my property. Given the answer that you gave to Ms. Benzina, I don't know if it's the same situation, but and if receiving this is just a procedure that happens in every request that goes to the commission, or if there is something specific that.
No, this is a standard abutter notifications, but because of this project and your property is right next to it, abutting to it, that's why you get the notice. The work that is being done is inside their property, nothing on your property. And all they're looking for is the last 40 feet of the path converted into a boardwalk, and then plus the vista pruning within their property towards the school pond. That's all.
And so, Mr. Lee, is that to assume that there isn't an increase in any traffic relative to that common way that abuts both of our properties?
No, shouldn't.
No.
And I only ask because it is a natural conservation land. So assuming that the public doesn't then therefore have exposure, it's primarily for the current owner there and their broader kind of view and convenience, if you will, to be able to kayak on Schoolhouse Pond. Is that correct?
This should not affect that at all, Tom.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Larry?
No, I meant to unmute. I'm done. I just didn't lower my hand. Thank you.
Any more public comment on this one?
Seeing none.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Temple.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hearn.
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
We have one last two item here. One is under the old and new business, New England Mountain Bike Association Cape Cod branch to formally requesting commission's permission for the continued installation and maintenance of a porta-o potty at Farmersville parking lot at West Barnstable Conservation Area. Back in
I
May.
recuse myself.
Okay. back in May 2nd, we had this discussion under the old and new business. At that time, the discussions was the New England Mountain Bike was asking whether the conservation would pay for the maintenance of the Porter Party stuff or Porter John stuff. And then we kind of saying, no, we don't want to involve in terms of the paying and the management of it. And then we did not take a vote. But right after that, there is an issues with the Porter Johns at the site. And so we're asking the New England Biking Associations to take care of that. And then they also check, they don't have any permissions to have this Porter John right on that site. So what I want to do though is to formalize it, let them have the rights to use the parking lot for the Porter John, and then asking them to pay for and maintain the Porter Johns. That's the vote that I'm looking for.
So, Tom, it would be a motion made that they're allowed to place it there with the condition that it is their responsibility to maintain
and pay
for body.
Correct.
Is that okay? I'd make that motion if you want.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. We have two sets of minutes, March 28th and May the 2nd.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Our next hearing is a remote meeting at 6:30 on June the 6th. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Lampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous. We are adjourned at 9:42.
Good night. Thank you.
What you can do, keep water on your property. Don't direct water into the street where it will